Amazing.
Amazing. Thank you, Sir
Amazing.
DJ.
Grabe. Sige. No,
Gosh.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm really in my bugal-bugal self today, no? Sige.
All right, very intense start there from Sir DJ. So once again, everyone, we the question is for our Sparkle session is what is your life's philosophy? It can be something like an explanation like Sir DJ. It can also be maybe if you just have a quote that you'd like to share a bit about. So we'll try to go through everyone while we're waiting for our role takers. Maybe we can have Toastmaster Mariam.
Coming from Sir DJ, no, I was thinking, oh, that was just a table topics answer. Should I also have to do? Well,
Yeah.
Toastmaster Charlie is the evaluator. So anyway, for me, I'm not going to answer something to do with stoicism, but I could like to share lang Essentialism by Greg. Something familiar with the idea of stoicism as well. But personally, I think integrity is something that I learned sometime later in my life na parang, uy, I realized na in everything that I do, there should always be integrity in the people that I meet with at the same time. But also, going to education, Toastmaster Miko mentioned about being upright, and Toastmaster DJ mentioned about being calm. And oh, I wish education would focus on those kind of values. Diba? It is not something that education has to teach children how to be calm, teach them how to be upright, and all of those. So far, our curriculum is really based on, having that knowledge, imparting knowledge. So that's another thing. Pero yun, I think for a verse that guide me through is kato, Psalm 90 verse 12, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So that's a good parang a way for me to remember how I could spend my time. So yun.
Okay, thank you, Toastmaster Mariam. That's very there's it's such a pleasure to always experience such of these intense answers. My gosh! So everyone, keep the spirit up. So maybe this time we can pass the ball along to Toastmaster Charlie. So Toastmaster Charlie, what is your life's philosophy?
Actually, I have a lot, but I am an advocate of culture of kindness because I believe that kindness can give hope and light to our murky world. And kindness is penniless yet priceless. Let's do random acts of kindness every day. Let's say, for example, last month, it was already 8 p.m. when I passed by an old man in front of a mall in our province here in Pangasinan. It was already 8 p.m. I came from Sisig Norte. I ordered food for dinner for our family. And then I passed by this old man. I was already 10 meters away from him. I was going to the place where I asked my brother to pick me up. But there was something in his eyes which drew me back. And so I allowed myself to be pulled back by my compassionate heart. I pretended to have been waiting for a jeepney and I asked him if there was still jeepney passing by that time just for me to start a conversation with him because I didn't want him to think that I came back for anything else or to interview him. And then I asked him, "Why are you still here by the road at this hour? You're a senior citizen." And then he told me, "I'm scavenging. We have no food yet." And that answer, sorry, I'm becoming emotional because this is my advocacy. It melted my heart because that answer brought me back to where I came from. I came from a very poor family. My parents are farmers, and when I was young, it was very difficult for them to really provide for us. And so when I had that opportunity, talagang I told myself, thank you, Lord, for giving me this opportunity to be kind and to meet people like like this old man. And that night, the next day, I had to pay 30,000 pesos for my bill for my business. So I was thinking, should I give 100, 200, 300? And then I decided to give 500 pesos. And then when I was already away from him, there was this tricycle driver who asked me to have a ride. But take note, my brother was waiting for me. He asked me, "Sir, sakay na po kayo. Sasakay po ba kayo?" I told him, "No, kasi may susundo sa akin." And he kept asking me, but he left. While I was already in the place where my brother was waiting for me, the driver, my brother was supposed to wait for me. He was on his way to that place. The driver came back and then pleaded, "Sir, sakay na po kayo." So that question, he removed his face mask and I saw something in his eyes. He was pleading that he needed money. And so I called my brother, "Don't pick me up anymore." So I really took that ride in order for this young boy to really, maybe he needed money. So I doubled the fare so I could help. And then I interviewed him. Then the next day, I bought milk for his baby because I learned that he is a young father. So I'm sharing this with you because many times in our life, every day, we meet people who have different stories to tell. It just takes the courage to ask how they are, what they are. And imagine if all of us will do simple kindness every day. Imagine if we are all little candles gathered in a dark room. The light of our little candles will give light and hope to the world. Thank you, Tian Nico.
All right, thank you,
Sorry, parang naging
Toastmaster
speech naman ata
Charlie.
yun.
It's okay. It's recorded, Toastmaster Charlie. We'll credit it to your next speech project. We'll coordinate with your president. And since you're the vice president of education, it's no problem at all. All right. Thank you for that very touching story, Toastmaster Charlie. It's definitely right that especially when you come from a country like ours, it becomes even more important the value of kindness. Okay, so no pressure to the next speaker.
Constant. Okay.
All
I
right,
think
so
it's
I
the fault of TMDJ and TM Mariam.
start the ball rolling, but it started plummeting down to the earth at a very fast pace. My gosh. So I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our program quality director for Division C, NICE. And maybe Toastmaster Nice, you want to take the stage on what is your life's philosophy if Toastmaster Nice is around.
I'm not around. Grabe siya.
No
Where should...
pressure.
So, bad. I can't raise it any higher, so I'll just bring it down to earth. But I can't. As in, sa man ni Oy. I don't want to be first, but I'm regretting. I never want to be first. Seems
But
like
that you can
the first was
expound on
supposed to
that
be a...
nicely.
I'll just add on, but I won't expand. uh, because at least Toastmaster Charlie already started with kindness. My life's philosophy is about kindness as well. It's about being kind or remaining kind despite others being not kind to you at all. And that's because if others are unkind, you might have the tendency to be mean and not be kind. But then at the end of the day, be you'd be thinking that that's not you. So
be kind even when others are not, because that's not because kindness is who you are, just like that. So yeah, like that long. So I don't want to do table topics, and I don't want to do my second speech. So let's keep it simple. Thank you.
You're on
Toastmaster
mute,
Miko, muted.
Miko.
Thank you. All right. So can you hear me now? Okay. So thank you, Toastmaster Nicey. Thank you for cooling down the room a bit. Very intense set of speakers we had for our first three contestants. So we're still waiting on a couple of people. The plan initially is to have Sir DJ speech first, but we don't have our general evaluator yet, and we also don't have our two panelists. Our no, our last panelist for Toastmaster DJ's speech. Okay. So I actually haven't gotten a response from our GE yet, so I'll double check on him. So maybe for now, if we can ask, maybe I'd like to hear a bit from Toastmaster Gary about his life's philosophy. So I'm actually very excited for Toastmaster Gary's life's philosophy, considering the that story that he presented us the last time about being a champion in being a champion painter. So take it away, Toastmaster Gary.
I cannot find a one single philosophy because I have many philosophies in life that I practice. But since our topic is about stoicism, I think the number one traits that I have observed from these great stoics, Seneca, Marcus, is that they're always wait. Yeah, uh, wait, because my daughter came and he brought me coffee. Yes, yes. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Abby. So uh yeah, the one thing I've learned from them is that they're always very consistent. So it's consistency that I saw in them. So I try to apply that in my art because I believe that my success in art is always judged by my last painting or my last project. And since I'm a although I am a teacher, I'm also a freelance artist. So um, I need to give my best every painting because I am not judged by my other works before that, but the consistency of my works. So that's the thing that I have learned from these great stoics of the past. Thank you, President Miko.
All right. Thank you, Sir Gary. And we're hoping to get your declaration of the session already soon once we get our general evaluator into the meeting. Okay,
I'll
so
take away
let's.
sorry.
Go ahead, Sir DJ.
I just learned something from Gary, no, because Seneca pala is a Stoic, no. So maybe that's where the expression comes from. You're so cynical, no.
Oh my. All right, and for everyone, if you could indulge us, if your internet allows, we would appreciate if you would turn on your cameras for us to really have a better feel for the meeting. But of course, since it is around dinner time for most of us, feel free to just step out of the meeting when you don't have a role, and or maybe you can just bring us along and have your dinner. So um, let's hear a bit from Toastmaster Lisa about what her life's philosophy is.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I think mine would be I was thinking, while you were discussing. So, what got stuck on my mind would be train your mind to see the good in everything. Like the current situation right now, this pandemic, there are a lot of negative things in this, but I chose to see the positive perspective. Like I have always been saying this, I wouldn't be able to visit my husband if it weren't for this pandemic, and I wouldn't be able to work remotely. I was able to take advantage of this new normal situation, working remotely. So that's what I chose to react with this current situation. I think that's just it on my end. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Toastmaster Lisa. Very beautiful. So, yes, that's definitely right. There are a lot of challenges. To put it lightly, a lot of challenges going on. And I think especially since the pandemic started, I'm I'm almost certain that everyone has developed a sense of appreciation for all the things that we have. So a lot of us have hit hard times, difficulty with work, difficulty with finances, and um, mental problems as well. Mental stress, mental problems. Baka may mental, what you call it? What you call it? Mental ailment. All right. Okay, so thank you, Toastmaster Lisa. I'd like to take this time to acknowledge the arrival of our general evaluator, Toastmaster Jan. So thank you, Toastmaster Jan, for visiting us tonight. And Toastmaster Jan is also going to be our GE for this evening. So I think we can get the ball rolling since we actually have most of our role takers. We're just waiting on Toastmaster Richard and Toastmaster Des for Toastmaster DJ's speech. If ever they don't arrive just yet, maybe we can move table topics up in the program. So before I pass over to Toastmaster Gary for our declaration of session hall, allow me to share our program for this evening. All right. So, excuse me. So tonight, ideally, we're supposed to start at 6:30, but it's okay. It's all right. We're Toastmasters and we know how to manage in any kind of situation. So we're going to have our table topics after our prepared speeches, ideally. But if Toastmaster Richard isn't around yet, we can just have the table topics first before our prepared speeches. So we have a very exciting set of evaluators and speeches tonight. I think it's actually a very good mix of advanced and beginning speeches. So I'm very excited to share in this meeting with everyone. And without further ado, I'll pass you along to Toastmaster Gary.
Thank you for that, President Miko. Good evening, fellow Toastmaster and friends. Just like the great Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, for tonight let us try to achieve their attitude of calmness and tranquility in saying our speeches, especially when called in the table topics. And to make sure that we attain that, let me remind everyone few of our ground rules. Please keep your mic on mute if you are not speaking. Turn off video when you are going to have a break. Use raise hand feature when you want to volunteer. Use chat for comments or concerns. You can also have your food and refreshments on your side. And I encourage everyone to change your virtual background related to our theme, Stoicism. Since everything is already in place, as your Sergeant at Arms, I declare the session hall ready. I'd like to welcome our President Toastmaster Miko for the call to order.
All right. Thank you for that beautiful declaration, Toastmaster Gary. I just like to make this short because we are going to have a in-depth, and we've already had an in-depth discussion of Stoicism as we started at 6 o'clock. Um, so I just like to remind everyone that here at Toastmasters, we are gathered in the spirit of two things. It's always education, and enjoyment. And without these two things, um, coming to Toastmasters will feel like a chore. And I'm probably certain there was a time in your Toastmasters journey that attending the meeting did feel like a chore. But I'd like to remind everyone that Toastmasters is really about learning and having fun while you learn. So we'd like everyone to sit back and relax. Hopefully, you don't become intimidated by our theme this evening. I'm going to do my best to guide us through this theme. But as anyone who's familiar with the theme knows, no one can actually be an expert about it. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in advance for showing up for our meeting tonight. And let's enjoy and learn. All right. Without further ado, by the power vested in me by Toastmasters International, and more importantly, by you, the members of our club, I call this meeting to order. Okay. So thank you everyone for arriving to this meeting. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to Toastmaster Zyril for our invocation and recitation of Toastmasters promise.
Thank you, Toastmaster Miko. I hope everyone can hear me well. So I'd like everyone to please bow their heads. And for anyone who is Catholic, you may do the sign of the cross. Dear Almighty One, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for all the blessings you have given us. Today we have gathered yet for another meeting, and we ask for your guidance that our meeting will go fine, our meeting will be fun, and our meeting will cover everything that we need to cover for today. I hope that if I hope that our guests will have fun, and I hope that they join our family soon. Please guide every role taker for today, that they give their best, and please forgive all of our sins and trespasses. And this we pray, amen. So for all our Toastmaster members, together we will do the Toastmasters promise. So please raise your right hand and let's say the promise together. As a member of Toastmasters International and my club, I promise to attend club meetings regularly, to prepare all of my projects to the best of my ability, basing them on the Toastmasters education program, to prepare for and fulfill meeting assignments, to provide fellow members with helpful, constructive evaluations, to help the club maintain the positive, friendly environment necessary for all members to learn and grow, to serve my club as an officer when called upon to do so, to treat my fellow club members and our guests with respect and courtesy, to bring guests to club meetings so they can see the benefits Toastmasters membership offers, to adhere to the guidelines and rules for all Toastmasters education and recognition programs, and to act within Toastmasters' core values of integrity, respect, service, and excellence during the conduct of all Toastmasters activities. You may lower your right hand, and I bring the table back to our president, Toastmaster Miko.
Okay, thank you, Toastmaster Zyril. This might come as a surprise to our next Toastmaster, but I'd actually like to give the floor to Toastmaster DJ to introduce our Toastmaster of the evening. So I'll pass you along to Toastmaster DJ.
Thank you, President Miko. No? So good evening, fellow Toastmasters, friends, and welcome to tonight's meeting. It's an exciting meeting for us because we also have an equally stoic Toastmaster of the evening. No? So I've known this leader long time ago, and ever since from the very start, I would always tell him that he's like a younger brother, to me. because I see a lot of myself in him. So as we know, our Toastmaster of the evening is a successful student leader. And we can also see the way that he is leading the club. He is also a successful leader in Toastmaster. And the reason for that, it's not exactly because of the position title that he holds, but because of his genuine and sincere interest, no? To dream more, to do more, and to become more. And that's also the kind of influence that he is passing to people he is serving, like me as a member of this club. Along with our Vice President of Education, our Toastmaster of the evening is very instrumental. Why I'm back delivering speeches and why I am about to finish 2 pathways in one Toastmaster year. And I owe it, among others, to our Toastmaster of the evening. So fellow Toastmasters, friends, and guests, let's welcome once again our president of Queen City Toastmasters Club and our Toastmaster of the evening, President Miko Enario.
All right, thank you, Toastmaster DJ. I think one of the amazing things about being here in Toastmasters is everyone can equally look up to each other. So it's always very humbling for me that I receive very humbling introductions like that. But Toastmaster DJ is also honestly one of the reasons that I decided to stay in the club um when I was when the first 6 months that I became a Toastmaster. So that's a story for another time. I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce and acknowledge our Toastmasters guests. We have a couple of non-Toastmasters guests coming, but maybe they're just catching up. So, without further ado, let me introduce first again our program quality director for Division C, also the president currently of Cebu Toastmasters Club. Let's all give a round of applause to Toastmaster Naisi Ponce. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for the time, Toastmaster Nicey. I know that everyone is grabbing for you to be a role taker, and we were just lucky enough this evening. All right. So we'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Jan Christopher Gianan. I'm not sure if I butchered your name. I'm sorry. He's the president of Eclara Toastmasters Club, and he was invited by Toastmaster Joel, and they were working together as part of the tech team for the past discon. So let's all give Toastmaster Jan a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. Sorry I'm late. Thank you, thank you.
Good evening. All right. So this face isn't one that we are unfamiliar with. He is the Vice President of Education of Toastmasters Club of Metro Dagupan, and he's none other than Toastmaster Charlie Dumawal. I think I'm butchering a lot of names tonight. Let's give a round of applause to Toastmaster Charlie. Thank you for having us, Toastmaster Charlie. It has been a while. I'm really glad to have you here. And here is a surprise guest for everyone. He is the sibling. It's up for you to guess if he's the younger or older sibling of one of our past presidents here at Queen City Toastmasters Club. His home club is actually Cariga Toastmasters Club. And we're very excited to have him around. Let's all put our hands together for Michael Velasquez. Okay, perfect. So we're still waiting on our non-Toastmaster guests. They'll probably catch up after a couple of minutes. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about stoicism. Stoicism. Been having a lot of trouble pronouncing this word even since the start of the night, but the correct pronunciation is stoicism. And Toastmaster Mariam can share the sound for all of us to hear. All right, she'll share the sound later. Before we talk about Stoicism, I want to talk a little bit about why this is such an interesting philosophy. So, let's have a little bit of recap to grade 10 um Araling Panlipunan when we're about to discuss Rome and the great emperors. So, one of the amazing thing about Stoicism is one of its most popular um, authors is actually one of the last great emperor of Rome, and that is Marcus Aurelius. But I want to level with everyone how significant this philosophy is and how significant Marcus Aurelius is as a person. At the time, Rome, because we don't live in the modern time, but at the time when Rome was at the height of its superpower, basically, when you're the emperor of Rome, basically you own the entire world. So, as people, we didn't discover that the world is round. We don't know that there are other nations outside of the nations that we live in. And we had a lot of misconceptions about how the world works. But all that being said, when you're the emperor in Rome, basically anything to your heart's content is there for the taking. You can have as many concubines as you want. You can get destroyed any building and get erected any building. And basically, the entirety of creation, to a certain extent, was at your fingertips. And it's very surprising then that Marcus Aurelius, especially through his writing, is one of the most humble people that you'd ever get to know. Marcus Aurelius was often writing to himself in his book Meditations that whenever we're dealing with people who are frustrated, we should remember that they are also going through struggles in their life. And he is the emperor of Rome. He could literally get anyone killed. He is the height of power, but yet he's always understanding to all of his subjects and anyone that he encounters. So that's a bit of a background of Stoicism. Every Toastmasters meeting, just like a Stoic deals with it, is an opportunity to learn. And at this portion, we'd like to introduce our word of the night to introduce us to a word that will increase our vocabulary. So let's put our hands together for Toastmaster Gary.
Thank you for that, President Miko. Um, Sorry because I just started recording your time because I didn't know that I am the timer for tonight. I tried to change my name, and then now I saw the activities for tonight. So I am the timer. So anyway, um, how, I would like to share my screen. How to do that, President Miko?
I think there's a share screen button, Sir
Ah,
Gary.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw
Yeah,
it
it's
already.
green. Mhm.
All right, one moment, please. Wait, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Sorry, sorry, I accidentally shared the word of the night already. So so anyway, I'll just go ahead. So for the benefit of non-Toastmaster friends, the purpose of the word of the night is to increase our vocabulary and to learn how to properly use them. Okay, and the word for the night is this, but I think you already know the answer. So anyway, it talks about something to do with also with our theme, Stoicism. So yeah, here on the first image, if you can see my mouse, it has something to do with Herculean strength, right? And on the second image, it has something to do also with um, exhaustion. And the third, something to do with uh, difficulty or tiresome in pursuit of a goal, like uh, the training of Manny Pacquiao. So without further ado, the word of the night is arduous. So this is the our word of the night, and it is an adjective. It means involving or requiring strenuous effort, difficult, and tiring. So its synonyms are taxing, difficult, hard, heavy, laborious, burdensome, strenuous, vigorous, backbreaking, stiff, uphill, relentless, Herculean, demanding, trying, tough, challenging, formidable, exhausting, wearying, fatiguing, tiring, and punishing. And its antonyms are easy and effortless. And the examples of this word in a sentence is that number one, last semester was a piece of cake, but taking 7 classes along with an internship this semester is going to be arduous. To live a life like a stoic needs a mental and emotional arduous effort. Running a marathon is not easy. It's arduous. All right, so let me ask at least 2 volunteers to use arduous in the sentence. Who would like to volunteer? If none, let me call on um, Sir DJ.
Arduous. As a Navy reservist, I wear fatigue not because it's arduous, but because it's another way of honoring our flag and our country. Arduous.
Thank you for that, uh, Sir DJ. And who would like to volunteer? Last volunteer, please. All right,
A
go
volunteer,
ahead.
Toastmaster
Uh,
Gary.
yes.
An
Uh,
arduous life is a necessity for the fulfillment of human potential.
Thank you for that, Toastmaster Mariam. And lastly, let me call on Toastmaster uh, uh, Toastmaster Charlie. I saw that you raised your hand.
Being kind to unkind people can be arduous, but it is always rewarding.
Thank you for that. So I encourage everyone to use this word every time you will speak here. Okay. So thank you for that, and back to you, Toastmaster Miko.
All right. Thank you, Toastmaster Gary. So arduous. All right. So it's beginning to feel like that's also our meeting for this evening. A little bit arduous. All right. So as a stoic, one of the one of the quotes that was also very striking for me is this quote, which I'm trying to share on my screen, but it's not letting me. What can you see? Where can you? This one? All right. So can everyone read the word on the screen, please? The word is amor fati. And what amor fati means, I hope that you can see only the coin and not my PowerPoint, but I don't know what's going on. Amor fati is the Latin for the love of faith. So, as one of the tenets of Stoicism, is that there needs to be a certain level of detachment that people have from the events which are going on around us. So no matter what happens to us, no matter it's good things and bad things, we must love it because that is our fate. Therefore, amor fati. So one of the things that Stoicism is really about, or uh, I believe it to be about, is about the practice of not making excuses for things and always accepting things for what they are. So there are times when we are very stressed and we feel like blaming the world or blaming fate for a lot of things that go on. But especially for the Stoic, this negative emotion or this outburst is done against the wind. It's done for no intention because who is there to listen to our cries to ourselves? So there are challenges and life is definitely surprising, but a Stoic always advocates that we should love faith. All right. So at this juncture, we are moving on to our prepared speeches, and I am needing to make a lot of adjustments on the spot, but I'm very happy to share this speaker's speech project. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So this is for the path presentation mastery level 5, and it's the elective number 1, and the excuse me. Huh. Okay, I'm sorry, that was wrong. Okay. Okay, here it is. Okay. I think I have the wrong slide actually. All right, here it is. Right. So again, it's the first elective for a project level 5. So this is a very advanced project. And the purpose of this project is to apply your skills as a public speaker to lead and facilitate a panel discussion. So the plan is to moderate a 20 to 40-minute panel discussion, but our speaker has already informed us that he plans to use the full 40 minutes for his project. And I'm very excited for the discussion we're going to have. So without further ado, this is going to be evaluated by our program quality director, Naisi Ponce. And this speech is titled Educating an Evolving World. So this is going to be presented by none other than Toastmaster Darwin John Moises, my Toastmasters brother and papa. So let's give Toastmaster DJ a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Mayong gabi, friends, and welcome to tonight's panel discussion. The coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, resulted to a pandemic which caused an unprecedented crisis in all areas. In the field of education, this emergency has led the massive closure of face-to-face education in more than 190 countries, including the Philippines, in order to prevent the spread of the virus and to mitigate its impact. Tonight, we have educators as panelists who will share their arduous but rewarding experiences, insights, and forecasts on education given the new world we live in. In alphabetical order, allow me to introduce them to all of you. Our first panelist has a degree in English education and a master's in literature. She teaches literature, language, writing, strategies, speech, gender studies, and leadership formation in all levels from grade 1 to college. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, let's welcome with virtual applause, Des Balota. Our second panelist has chemical engineering as a degree and is teaching Earth and Life Science Empowerment Technologies and Komunikasyon sa pagpapalaganap ng wika at kulturang Pilipino to senior high school students. Ladies and gentlemen, Zyril Enriquez. Our third panelist is a licensed occupational therapist, is finishing his master's in occupational therapy teaching, foundational science, mental health, and community-based rehabilitation in occupational therapy. Gentlemen and ladies, John Fitzgerald Ekamin. And finally, our fourth panelist, she has a degree in mass communication, a diploma in professional education, and is about to finish her master's in literature. She's currently teaching all learning areas and subjects in lower and upper elementary grades. Friends, let's say hello to Mariam Soliano. And to all our viewers out there, if you all notice, all levels of education are represented by tonight's panelists. I also encourage you to type your questions in the chat box, but we only have a maximum of 40 minutes for this discussion. So if I or we cannot answer your question, I promise that I will send our responses offline. So is everyone excited and ready? Because I am. So let's begin. So now I'd like to first pose my first question to all our panelists. Since the start of the lockdown, so that's I think March of last year, and everybody all of a sudden moved to the online platform. So how has it been in the field that you are teaching? So maybe I'll start with Mariam.
All right. Thank you for the question. How has it been? I think at the first few start, it was really a challenge for all of us because as a Montessori guide, we use materials and imagine all the materials is no longer available. So we felt disabled. It's a disability for us. But then I think we are able to find the right platform to use for us that eventually we try to work on what we have right now as long as we have maintained that Montessori mindset. And hey, the beautiful thing is that children could adjust really well. They could adjust way better compared to us adults. So in that way, we've got the hang of it. So far we have learned a lot through the pandemic and experience.
Thank you, Mariam. So this is upper and lower grades, not elementary. So I'm curious actually how it's like also for our senior high students. So Zyril, how has it been?
Well, in our school, since I'm teaching in a public school, not everyone is actually have the capacity to learn through online means. In our school, we do offline and printed modular. And what we do is that we just relay instructions and ask the students for anything they are confused with for us to address them, the subjects they are confused with, because not everyone has a gadget, not everyone can afford load. So what we do is just try and connect and contact and have constant communication with the students, and even try posting videos, like recorded videos on our Facebook page for them. If they have a load, even once a week, they could watch it and answer their modules. But so far, it's kind of challenging, and we're still developing in depth ed, I think, to have a more proper way in teaching our students, especially to those who have no resources for online platforms in teaching. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you actually raised, no? Because when everybody eventually moved to the online platform, not many also recognized at that time the readiness of everyone. So there really are those who are disadvantaged technology-wise. So thank you, Zyril. Now let's move to the experiences of our college educators. So I'd start with John.
Yes, so far, yes, it has been challenging also because, we had to start from scratch. Are we going to do modules, or are we still going to, continue with the course outline that happened before pandemic? But I think through time we were able to adapt and really also embrace the digital platforms and the digital resources we have, as also the institution was able to adapt and use. So it has been very helpful so far with the use of virtual resources and how we're able to tailor our lectures, incorporate those resources into the lectures, and yes, also the materials, because it's a medical field, so we really need to have those practical skills also, but the virtual resources still do help. So I think that was a really big plus in terms of the change.
And I'm actually interested on the part that you mentioned that you are on the medical field. So eventually on the succeeding part, I would be very curious about how it's done, especially application and laboratory classes.
Right.
Thank you, John. And now let's move to the person who's actually teaching all levels from grade 1 to college. Des, how has it been?
For this school year, actually for the past 15 years, I've been teaching in college. As for the grade 1 to fourth year high school, that is more than 15 years ago. So there. As for the this time, the challenges, well, it is mostly technology, because we have students who are in areas in which technology or connectivity is really a challenge. In fact, there are times when connectivity in my place is also a challenge. So that's why we got to adjust. The students adjust, the teacher also adjusts, and there are things that we just have to leave to trust and industry, because there are really times when not everything can be shown. For example, the camera is going to be switched off. Many, if not all of us, do that because we have to reduce bandwidth. So basically, there are adjustments on both sides, and it's arduous to be teaching this time, but there are ways to make things work.
Yes, and I've always been inspired by the spirit, the how do you say that, indomitable spirit of our educators teaching now at this arduous time that we are also in. So the world is confronting a pandemic, and at the same time, everybody's also migrating to a platform that we have not tried in the past. So a lot of moving parts this time. So earlier, Mariam, you actually mentioned about using of platform, the correct platform. So what are your key takeaways this time that you are teaching, no? And doing learning online?
For us, since our method really focuses on collaboration and creativity, so we have to make sure that the platform that we're using allows children to collaborate enough, not only through video conference, but for them to really work together. And that's our main focus. And my takeaway is for us to see online world in a different way. As early on, we think online world is something for entertainment. The children would go for online games and other things, but now we're able to see it as a way, as a community of data. Now we could teach the children how to process these data and how to use this online to their advantage. Oh, I'm talking about children who are belonging to higher parang social status, but that for us is a great takeaway in our experience to see that there's no longer these physical boundaries when it comes to learning, because we're now being able to tour. So as an initial presentation, it was a great advantage for us. And at the same time, I think for us, the idea of us to know that we could adapt and adjust as long as we have the right mindset. Yun, it was parang refreshing, and at the same time empowering to know that it can be done.
Yeah, actually, I like the part when you mentioned about looking at online as an entertainment platform in the past and how it has evolved as a source of information and for students, at least for those who have the resource, who can afford to process those information and still learn. And I think this is also a good contrast, perhaps, that Zyril can add more context to, because earlier she also mentioned this time from the context of those who are technologically challenged. No, and that's not necessarily because of connectivity, but mainly because of the means to afford technology. So Zyril, what are your takeaways also now that you have moved to this arduous but rewarding platform of teaching?
Well, I think my takeaways in this method is that I should have more patience, especially that in our method, the teachers have more work to do, especially in contacting the students. And sometimes that some students contact you late at night because that's the time they get to borrow their parents' cell phones. That's the time they get load. Sometimes we need to extend our patience and understand na these students, they try to contact you because they want to learn even though they have the lack of resources. So my takeaway really is to extend my patience more, and when the parents talk to me is that I would like to understand their situation, because learning for the students, it's a hand in hand, how do you call this, responsibility of both the teachers and the parents. So as much as possible we try to contact and have good relationship with the parents so that we can help their children learn in these kinds of method that we're doing here. So yeah.
That's actually an interesting and heartwarming point also, because for those who are challenged, it's important and it's good actually, Cyril, that you brought that up, the importance of patience and also to understand the situation, because not only has teaching already moved into something that's online, but it has also invaded even a teacher like you, no, your personal space, I meant. So yes, I think it's a good takeaway also for you to let our parents and our viewers also understand what teachers go through on the other side of the camera. So now let's move to college teaching. And this time what's interesting, it's because it's medical in nature. And earlier I was actually curious, John, how are laboratory applications done at this time? So what are your takeaways also teaching in that kind of environment?
Yeah, so far it is true. I think even how Montessori also is dependent on the materials. I think college, in college, we, because it's occupational therapy and physical therapy, we handle patients and we have those models for skeleton, for the for the parts of the body and all of that. But
Correct.
I think and it was really a big part of our environment, the laboratory sessions. So I think that what's great also on the online platform is that there is really the abundance also of virtual resources. I think one of the biggest values I got to practice or see is also practice being resourceful. As an educator, I also have that responsibility to look for more ways, to find more ways where I can get free stuff, or just the accessible and easy ones, and also give that responsibility to the students. When we give certain assignments, we give them that freedom to also research and do it on their own. And then in terms of laboratory sessions, yeah, we really just try to make it virtual, and it's really more on handling patients. Us as students before, we get to be the clients of the therapist, being doing the tests and doing the evaluations and all that. But here in the virtual platform, it's still doable, actually, the laboratory sessions, where the student gets to be the student has his or her mom or his or her sibling to be the patient in during laboratory sessions. So we really get to see the house or the environment. So it's a big plus also, because it's also subtly being able to build that awareness to the community, that, oh, this is what we do as OTs, this is what we do as physical therapists. So there's also that, maybe that silver lining and having laboratory sessions on an online platform.
I think that's an interesting point that you raised, because I did not also see that before. No, number one, the one also that I recognize is there really are a lot, and I think Mariam also presented this earlier. There are a lot of resources that were available in the past, but probably because we associated online with just entertainment, not many are actually availing of those. So now that we were forced by the situation, to your point, you also were able to be more resourceful to mine those available education materials and also use them to teach your students. And I also, yes, and yes, the part that I did not actually have that much appreciation is, yes, because we brought learning in the homes. So that means that the family members are also able to understand, no, and also learn with the learner, which is also an interesting take. No? So thank you, John. So Des, you mentioned earlier actually about, which is quite similar to Zyril, no? But this time connectivity, not necessarily on being afford technology, but really the actual limitations at times of the technology, no, and the infrastructure that we have in the Philippines. So do you have any takeaway also coming from that space, no, of not having the right amount of bandwidth that's required to effectively teach, no, consistently at all times?
My takeaway is just to be patient and trust that there are people who are very dedicated. I must say that there are some who do not have connectivity issues, but they just capitalize on the fact that that connectivity issues uh, is part or are part of reality. So even if connectivity is very good at their place, it's actually very easy to say that um, we do not have a good internet connection right now. So what I have to do is just accept the possibility that there are people who make excuses and also celebrate the fact that I have more than I think more than 70% of my students are dedicated, and I also it's very heartwarming and very encouraging to listen to young people who have the depth and the creativity when they share their experiences, when they share their wisdoms. Most of the sharings that I have are when I teach literature and when I teach social sciences. So I think that there is hope. Actually, I even recall when I was 18 or 19, I did not have that depth, I did not have that maturity, and there are students who have that. So I would just focus on the positive, just focus on the celebration. Of course, I hope that everyone is going to be more industrious and more dedicated, but that's just it. In the first place, I also have my limitations. We all have limitations. So just accept, do the best, and move on there.
Yeah, you brought an interesting, but at the same time, it's usually considered as the white elephant in the room now. And this time you're actually referring to when the cameras are actually off, are the students really there? No?
Yeah, exactly. But I do have some.
Yeah, which is a valid question to ask. But yes, you're about to say something.
I also have engagement checks. I have engagement checks, and then I check and they type. So when I have engagement checks, I give very easy questions, and questions that you can answer without even blinking. So I ask them to type their answers. Or for example, I just tell them, okay, type the number 4, or what is the first word in slide number 5, like that. So it's very easy to answer that. Now, there are, and then there are times also when I already ask the high order thinking questions, then I noticed that there are some who would leave, and I would say, oh, so is it really like that? That after my HOTs, after the HOTs, then that's the time connectivity issues happen. Wow, right? But I do not anymore dwell on that because it's time consuming. If I'm going to say, hey, where were you earlier? I do not anymore do that. So I just focus on who are there, and those who say that they would just type their answers because their mic is not working and so on. So the idea of balancing tolerance and patience, and also celebrating what needs to be celebrated, and actually also thinking about how I can do classroom management, because this is a very new thing, and the classroom management that I learned before is not totally applicable in given this platform. So, well, that's it. There is always a first time, and there will be researches that will be written about this. And as we go along, then there would be some improvements.
And I think I also like the part in which you raised that while there are those that we somehow doubt their commitment towards learning, but it's better to focus on those who are actually there, and that to your assessment are the 70%. And that's also modeling the behavior. We're not too caught up on what is lacking, but we're also focusing on what is there. So you're not just teaching, but you're also modeling that behavior. There's actually here a question coming from our viewers, and I leave one or two of our panelists to actually comment on this one. What can you say about the clamor of certain students for academic freeze? So I think this is something to do with just not doing it online and wait when we can do face-to-face. I think this is the context of that question. Any of our panelists wants to comment on this one?
I'd like to speak on behalf for elementary students regarding that one, because we have experienced that in our school when we do have some children who decided, okay, we're going to go back to school once we already have the physical schooling. But for me, the takeaway of the online schooling is for us to see what education really is all about. It's education responsibility does not fall on the school alone. Parents and the home and the community that the child belongs to is also part of that education. And independent learning is also something I think that's something that the children could learn. So I think it's a mindset that has to be checked, to be changed among the parents as well regarding that. I hope that for those parents or for those family who decided to go through that academic freeze and to say, okay, I'm not going to put my child in the school yet, I hope that they also have their own ways of continuing the child's education, not entirely the academic side, but on the other sides as well, like the physical or the mental or the social other sides as well for that. But I don't agree that there's really an academic freeze in such a way that the child will continue grow on its own and the child will demand for knowledge on their own instinctively din naman. So, but I just want to reiterate nga na there's also that takeaway. If you continue on this with, you then realize the responsibility of the home in educating the child. So it's not just from the schools.
Yeah, that's another perspective that you're also bringing to the table, no? Because I also agree, no, to what you said, that because I also thought that education, a lot of it happens outside the classroom. No? So they learn the theory probably inside the classroom, but a lot of education has also something to do with application. And that's what the environment, such as the family, also provides. So I don't want to put you on the spot, actually, Zyril, but I think I'd like you to have the second opinion on this one, because I think your situation is also unique, no? Because the limitation is not necessarily on resources. No, your limitation is not really on education in itself, but on the resources and the means to be able to avail such, no? Because not many really also has the economic standing to be able to afford such expense, no, and arduous type of education. So Zyril, I'd like to hear the second opinion from you on this one.
Okay, so I think in my students that will ask for academic freeze, it's mostly the students who are working right now, because of course, like I said, it's about the resources, and some of the families can't afford that their parents are the only ones who will work, because some of their parents lost their jobs due to the pandemic, and they ask their children to work, because some of my students are actually working, and some of them don't actually reply to me, because once they reply, they will only say that, sorry ma'am, nagtrabaho man gud ko. And I want to understand them so much, because I know their needs. They have to work because their parents are not here. Their parents don't have a job, so they have to work in position of their parents. But sometimes I think that's why they want to ask for academic freeze, because they want to work first, so that when it's already available, how they say it, they won't get left behind with
Behind, yeah,
everyone
correct.
else, because they don't
Correct.
want that, but they also want to help their families to afford to even eat 3 times a day and all the likes. So that's why I think that some students would really think about for academic freeze, because they don't want to get left behind. At the same time, they want to provide for their families. So it's like they want to ask the education to adjust for them in some sort of way. But I think that's just for some situations, some family situations that can't afford. So yeah, I think that's why.
It's actually a timely comment because in the past, when education was face to face, particularly our students in the public schools, then most of the money actually were allocated to basic needs like food, shelter, clothing. No, but now that there's an added expense that also comes with technology that they need to afford for them to be able to be not left behind compared to the others. So that's why I agree. There's also some form of clamor, especially coming from this marginalized learners, for an academic freeze. So thank you, because I think we're getting two flavors, coming from the same type of question and two different perspectives that we all can learn from. So John, actually, there's a question here that might be very specific, not necessarily because you're in the medical field, but I know because of also you're somehow in that area. So based on your own experience and the experience of those who are teaching in the medical field. So the question actually here is, how do you think our medical practitioner graduates will eventually perform in real life situations, considering that patient rapport was practiced only in the virtual world?
Sorry, what was that to DJ? Considering that?
Patient relationship was practiced only in the virtual world.
Yeah, I think it really does pose a challenge in terms of the abundance or the amount of exposure and learning. There really is a disadvantage because everyone was locked down. The internship was cut, but at least in our perspective in occupational therapy, there is still what we call teletherapy sessions or virtual therapy sessions where it is a valid or it is a recognized platform of service delivery. So there are still ways, although there are still limitations, like what resources you can do, what things you can teach in terms of occupational therapy. So I think there is still that development. I cannot really gauge how much progress it has achieved or so far because it's a new field, but at least it's good that there is something that's still ongoing. So I think it's a work, if I may say it. So it's also a work in progress. And in terms of the medical, like the doctors, the physicians, I do have some friends who are taking the medical courses, and there's also the good transition already that they have a week that they actually go to the actual site, the hospitals, to be on duty. So there is that there are those little steps taken already. But even if they are on a virtual platform, they still have other learning opportunities like case studies or case studies or journal how do you call it, appraisals and stuff that they can actually, that these are also live or real life situations in the past that they can discuss and brainstorm. So I think there is still that avenue for learning despite the virtual platform.
And I hate to put you on the spot, John. So I just want a yes or no on this one. So do you really believe that there is no significant difference eventually of the type of medical graduates that we have at this time compared to in the past when it was face-to-face learning? I hate to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to ask that.
I think yes, there will be no significant difference. Yeah.
No, and for me, that's also a helpful information coming from an insider because it's also a common question at this time, especially that the medical field is dealing with life now. So that's also a question that's often raised by people on how the quality of our medical practitioners will be. given this change or this chapter in education. So I think Des, because I think you're the one that I wasn't able to ask, the questions coming from the audience. There's an interesting one I think that suits you best, and it has something to do with politics. So given this current educational situation that we are in, which is both arduous but at the same time rewarding, do you think there's something that the government should have done better?
In terms of delivering
Ha-
for the students?
Yes, no, on how we are handling the overall situation, because everybody just, okay, I'm now putting my opinion.
Overall.
But yes, there's a sudden shift.
Okay.
And to a certain extent, there are some policies and regulatory preparations that should have also been done. No? So what's your take on this one?
So there are two questions. One is, how do I see the government's response to this pandemic?
Yes, on an education context.
Okay. So on an education, on the context of delivering for the students, I would say that there are a lot of things that should have been done that were not done. There were things that, let's say, for example, in ensuring the materials for the students, and ensuring also the training for the teachers. But the thing here is, who was prepared for this? Who was prepared for this situation? So I think that in terms of delivering the lessons, having a strategy for following up, checking on who, like how learning happens in the homes, because there should be another strategy for that. Now, there were things that should have been put in place before classes resumed, but were not put in place before classes resumed. For example, just even if we're just going to talk about reproducing the learning materials or the modules, for example, even when we talk about budget and also facilitating the distribution of these learning materials. So that is just one of the things that should have been given more time for preparation. But we also have, it's actually very complicated, because there are also other people involved. There are teachers who are involved, and the teachers are the teachers also have their own preoccupations. They also have their own responsibilities at home. So in fact, now as for the private schools, so for example, so for the private schools, I think I have not read a study about this, given this particular context, and this are the specific experiences during this pandemic. But I'm just going to focus on what I have witnessed and what I have heard and experienced as a private school teacher. It was more than arduous to have the preparations, the stress, the idea of how we can move how we could make the classroom close to ideal, given the many challenges. So I think that even if this is where our participation is going to come in, because there have been many limitations, and there are even educators who refuse or who do not like the idea of teaching given this arrangement. So I think that in order to just respond to how the government to the extent of government preparations for this arrangement, in order to remedy this, or in order to get things close to what we want to happen, then as educators, it would also be our challenge and our mission to do as much as we can, even given the challenge of the number of limitations that we did not expect to happen when we were training as education students, and also when we were teaching early on in our careers.
I think, and thank you for that perspective also, Des, no, because you mentioned about there should have been a lot of things that the government has done, but who was really prepared for this? No? So this is an entirely new situation for it. And I also like the sense of ownership that you are rather suggesting. Now, when you said that you would rather take this as a challenge, no, as an educator on what can we do best given the situation, because I think that's still true, because government is not just government is also people, and that includes students, that includes the family, the parents, and also the educators. So thank you for bringing that up. I have a very good efficient timer, so I just learned that we're about, and we need to wrap up our discussion for tonight. So because a lot of our viewers here, can be parents or can be students, or at least they live with somebody who is a student, or at the very least they know somebody who is a teacher, a parent, or a student. So do you have any parting words for them? So I'll start this time with Dr. John.
Being a doctor is still so far away in my field.
Okay, yes.
But if there's any parting words that I would like to share, I think that it's really okay to, when there's a shift in terms of the system, in terms of education, it's really okay to start from scratch. It's okay to, practice, to challenge yourself, to be resourceful, because we're so used to having all the materials ready, all the resources ready. So it's really okay to have that, that learning process, again, that arduous learning process to creating those deliverables in terms of what you teach. And it's also really, I guess, high time also for educators to, I guess, embrace change also in terms of maximizing the resources in a virtual platform, because it really does help in terms of the time, in terms of the preparation, also in terms of the creativity that you can show as an educator to the students. So there, embrace change, in terms of your career.
Thank you, Dr. John. Embrace change, yes, and we will. How about Cyril? Any parting words, for our viewers?
I guess what I could say is that learning is for everyone, not only the students, not only the parents, but the educators as well. We're all learning new ways, arduous or not. We're learning new ways how to teach. We're learning new ways how to learn. So everyone is learning at the same time. And one thing to remember only is that do not be afraid to ask. You may be a student, a teacher, a parent. Don't be afraid to ask if you are confused on how the new, how do I call this, new processes go. How do I teach my child? How do I ask about this lesson? How do I make my process more proper or efficient in teaching? So that's what I can say. So learning is for everyone, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
And yes, and that's a very good point that you actually raised. No, education is for everyone, and don't be afraid to ask. Bas Puch. Just kidding. Okay, good. So that's, thank you, Cyril. Now, Mariam, you have any parting words for our students or our parents or those who live with students or parents out there?
So for everyone, this is for every single one. I'd like to tell that you are not alone, because education, it does not involve in schools alone. It holds the whole community. And I think this is a reminder for everyone with that. And hold on to your reasons why you're helping your child. Hold on to your reasons why you're helping to your student, in spite of all the challenges and the frustrations that we have right now. And yeah, I think at the very end, I think we've acknowledged the need to change our education system. And because of that, this experience will then be our kumbaga, ammunition for the next education that we are leaving behind for the next set of generations that we have. So the good things still after everything else. So yeah.
Yeah, no, because there's always available resource for those who have a why. I think you mentioned about connecting to a why, and I'd like to say, that somebody also said in the past that those who have a why they are teaching, why are they sending their students to school, and why are they learning, will always have to figure out. Thank you, Mario, for bringing that up. And finally, Des, they have our final word, not for our sponsors, but for our viewers.
Okay, for my parting shot, I have two major points. One is hide, HIDE. So we may be hidden in the sense that we may not have to, we may have to switch off our cameras, or we may not be seen all the time. But I hope that everybody is going to put in mind H, which is honesty. So even if there aren't people who are closely monitoring us, we can, of course, do what we should do in order to make the most of this situation. And I for independence, independence because this is the time that we actually go back to ourselves and see what we can do, what stuff we are made of. It's not about like excuses because this is absent, this is present, that's why it's this. So that's independence. And then D is for dedication, or we can call that resoluteness, because there are challenges that we cannot just do away with because they are really not within our control. And E is for excellence, because yes, there are limitations, but it's very important to have in mind that the point of education is excellence. And excellence is not just about grades, it's actually about sense and sensitivity. It's actually that. It's not just about being able to get high scores, although it's very, although that's, of course, as a teacher, it's very rewarding to have to read good outputs and to listen to very good answers. But, and also for them, we also have to remember that the students are also patient with us because we also have our limitations, connectivity wise, or it's tiring, the screen time and all. And also one thing that I would like to emphasize is shared accountability and shared responsibility, because I have been hearing, nag-emote na ko, I have been hearing, sharings that there are teachers who are blamed and blamed and blamed because they are not following up enough. What is enough? Even if there is already a lot of following up done. So this is, there should be that shared accountability and shared responsibility. We do not dump everything on one party, like teachers lang or parents lang or students lang. This is something shared. And with this, we are in the same situation. So we got to be collaborative, and let us make the meaning of HIDES, HIDESS, one that is going to be beneficial for all of us.
You're on mute, Sir DJ. You're on mute, Sir DJ.
Sir DJ, I think you're muted, Sir DJ.
Oh no. Sige, so yes, shared accountability, shared responsibility, and thank you, Des, for bringing that up. That while we are hiding from the coronavirus inside our homes, but in the context of education, this should not be the time for us to be away or to be afraid, but this is the time for us to hide, HIDE, and that's honesty, independence, dedication, and excellence. So to those our viewers, thank you for all your questions. And I'd also like to express my thanks to all our panelists for a very wonderful interaction tonight. So as I've said earlier, the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented crisis in all areas, including education. And tonight, I'm thankful for all your questions and also the insights coming from our panelists, educators who are and will continue to make a difference. And I'm sure that their arduous but rewarding experiences, insights, and takeaways in education will help us learn and live better given the new world we have and the new world we will have. So once again, this is DJ, your host for the evening, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. So let's give Toastmaster DJ a round of applause, and all of the panelists. It was a really intense discussion, and I'm kind of excited now for the time when Sir DJ is forced into retirement. He's ready to hold his own talk show. So don't worry, Sir DJ. As your brother, I will personally sponsor your studio, and then we'll make it happen.
Thank you. Brother
So it's going
Nico.
to be coffee with DJ at 3 p.m. Okay, so thank you, Sir D. It's very refreshing. It's time check. It's 8:13. I just like to inform everyone that because we were a bit late at starting, we've moved back the expected end of the meeting from 9 o'clock sharp to around 9:30. So if we're following the 9:30 schedule, we are still on time. So without further ado, I'd like everyone to look at my screen again. Okay. So here's another medallion. And funny enough, if you're wondering, these really beautiful medallions actually cost $26 each. And these are each engraved with a certain phrase of Stoics. And this phrase by a Stoic is premeditatio malorum. And what this means is contemplating evil or contemplating bad things that happen. So, like I mentioned in the discussion we had before the evening started, a stoic is someone that in every dealing, in every experience, uh, acts as though they've already had that experience 1,000 times. So that means that they have a complete control of their emotion, and they aren't easily swayed by the negative emotion of others. And this quote, premeditatio malorum, is talking about how a stoic does that. And it all exists here in the mind. Because of course there are lots of experiences that we can't experience 1,000 times. Hell, there are even a lot of experience we can't even experience more than once. For example, hopefully not a lot of us have experienced it, but losing our parents. We can't lose our parents more than once. But getting ready for that experience of losing your parents is something we can all prepare for in the Stoics' eyes. So that's what this quote means. Premeditatio malorum. So it's contemplating evil. Okay, and I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our last speaker of this evening, Toastmaster Joy. Toastmaster Joy just made it on time. Just as Toastmaster DJ ended his speech, perfect timing. And we're moving on to our next speaker for this evening. So, Stoicism aside, the next speaker is going to be talking about a level 1 project. So what we just experienced was actually a level 5 project about to end and actually about to culminate. He's about to become a distinguished Toastmaster, Sir DJ. But this is a project from the start of a Toastmasters journey. So we have a lot of spread this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So this project is evaluation and feedback. And this is going to be the first of two speeches. And the purpose of this project is to present a speech on any topic, receive feedback, and apply the feedback to a second speech. So the second speech could be a revised version of this speech, or it can be a different speech altogether, as long as the feedback is applied. So this is the first of two speeches, and the speech title is More Stupid. The evaluator for this project is going to be Toastmaster Mariam, our distinguished Toastmaster, and it's gonna be delivered by none other than one of our most recent members of our royal family, Toastmaster Chai. Let's give Toastmaster Chai a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. President Pico, please allow me to share my screen.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, once again, good evening, Toastmaster Royals. And the title of my second speech is More Stupid. So let me ask you this question. Can I see a virtual raise of hand? Who among you here have joined an arduous marathon or a 42-kilometer race? Please raise your virtual hand. I'm checking. Oh, wow, we have one. That's great. So let me share with you this quote. If God invented marathon to keep people from doing anything more stupid, the triathlon must have taken him completely by surprise. By PZ Pierce, a sports medical practitioner. And what is more stupid than a marathon? Of course, more arduous than a marathon, and this is a triathlon. Triathlon from the word itself, tri meaning three, it means three events. Typically, it's swimming, biking, and running. And tonight, I will give you a walkthrough of these three disciplines, as well as share with you what gears to use and some tips. Now, let's start first with the first discipline, which is the swim part. Now, in swimming, if you were not a swimmer back in your school days, then for sure, swimming is your Waterloo. The first step in swimming is to get access to a swimming pool, whether it be a public pool or a private one. Do not swim right away in the open water or the open seas because it's going to be tiring and it's going to be quite difficult. Another thing is that get these gears. First one is get a swimsuit. If you have one available at home, then that's great, as long as it is not a two-piece sexy bikini. Or get an inexpensive suit, because that would be enough. Next is to protect your eyes, and you need a pair of goggles. Make sure that it fits you properly with proper suction and with no leakage. Now, if you have long hair or color-treated hair, then it would be better if you wear a swim cap. Now, with all of these things with you, then it's time to head out to the pool and let's start swimming. If you know how to swim, then start by swimming 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps or more. But if you don't, then I suggest hiring a swim coach, at least to teach you the basics of swimming or to give you a swim program. Now, if you have mastered the skill already and have registered for a race, then I suggest that you swim at least 2 to 3 times in the open water prior to race day so as to acquaint yourself with the current and the waves. And that's for swimming. The second part is the bike part. Obviously, the first thing that you would need here is a bike, whether it be a road bike or a mountain bike. No need to buy a triathlon bike right away. The next thing is to get a good quality helmet to protect your head in cases of accidents. And then for the shoes, you can actually wear any rubber shoes or your running shoes. But if you want to pursue this sport, then I suggest wearing a clipless pedal. And the last thing that I would suggest is purchasing or acquiring a triathlon shorts or a tri-shorts. Yes, it is quite expensive, but as they say, this would really make a world of difference, especially during race day. Again, with all of these things with you, it's time to head out. Go out to your village, go out to the metro, and start riding your bike. Embrace that moment, feel that wind gushing through your face, and enjoy the ride. The last of the discipline is the run part. And what you basically need here is a good pair of running shoes. Start by running slow or do a run and walk combination. Take note that running after you have swum and bike is different from just running alone because your legs would feel wobbly, and that is the reason why we need to train hard in order to play harder. Because triathlon again is an arduous sport. Now, with all the discipline that I have mentioned, you might ask, why would I join a triathlon? Let me share with you these 3 benefits of doing a triathlon. The first one is the obvious part. The physical benefit, you will become stronger, healthier, and you would have more energy. The second of this benefit is they say a strong body would also result in a strong mind. So that's the mental benefit. Triathlon would give you more confidence, keeps you motivated, and goal directed. And the last of this benefit, joining a triathlon, is the social benefit. So socially, you will be able to meet people, to gain new friends, friends that would become your training buddies and teammates. Or it could be one of your family members joining triathlon, and they could be your teammates as well. Now, with all of these three disciplines that I have mentioned, and with the benefits that we can get from triathlon, I am hoping that one or two of us can join triathlon. Maybe we can start with one discipline, then transition to another one, then hopefully become a triathlete. An arduous task as our word for the night. Now let me go back to the quote I mentioned earlier. If God invented marathon to keep people from doing anything more stupid, the triathlon must have taken him completely by surprise. And yes, Toastmaster Royals, I was once a more stupid person. Everyone, thank you and a pleasant evening to all.
All right, let's give a round of applause to Toastmaster Chai. So just like Toastmaster Joy, I also am a triathlon athlete in my dreams. So it looks very challenging, but unfortunately I actually don't know how to ride a bike. So I guess one step leads to another. So maybe we can all join a triathlon together with Toastmaster Aprilin and Toastmaster Chai and Sir DJ being our main motivator. All right. So we have one more speaker and then we'll be on time for this meeting. And this speaker is actually going to be presenting from the middle of a pathways path. And this is level 3. So we have all the spread tonight. We have level 1, level 3, and level 5. So this is an elective from level 3. So it's her last speech before she graduates from this level. And this is going to be about creating creative visual aids. So the purpose of this project is to practice selecting and using a variety of visual aids during a speech. So I'm actually very excited to see what kind of visual aids our speaker has prepared. So this speech is going to be evaluated by none other than our immediate past president and area director, Toastmaster John. Let's all put our hands together for Toastmaster Joy Pastor Fide Roman, our distinguished Toastmaster, with her speech, EQ. Let's all give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Toastmaster Miko. Before I start, there you go. I'm gonna share my screen. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and friends. Before, when I was still starting to work, someone told me that IQ will be a game changer as far as being in the workforce is concerned, as far as your progress in your career is concerned, and as far as your future as an employed individual is concerned. But fast forward 10 or 15 years after, I heard someone say that IQ is no longer a game changer, but EQ rather is the new IQ. Tonight, I am going to talk to you about emotional intelligence. 75% of careers are derailed for reasons related to emotional competencies, including inability to handle interpersonal problems, unsatisfactory team leadership during times of difficulty or conflict, or inability to adapt to change or elicit trust. So tonight, For those of you who are already working, I hope this will be something that you will be able to take home with you and that you would be able to gain insights and benefits from. Now, I am going to start off the presentation by giving to you what the talk is going to be like tonight. So I'm going to go through four specific topics as to what emotional intelligence is, the competencies and skills related to emotional intelligence, how to hone or develop your emotional intelligence, and what's in it for you. Now, what is emotional intelligence? It is said that emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your emotions, to understand what they're telling you, and realize how your emotions affect the people around you. Affect the people around you because if you are not that conscious enough, sometimes or most of the time, our actions are oftentimes governed by our emotions or how we get to feel towards the situation or whatever it is that is fronting us. Now, it is said that our anything that you see, smell, hear, taste, or touch, or anything that um, elicits stimulus, it travels. Electrical signals travel through this part of the brain, which is your spinal cord, and you get to rationalize these senses or the things that you were able to see, these electrical signals, by acting on it. But we fail to sometimes realize that before we get to think rationally about what we just saw, what we heard, what we smelled, what we have tasted, or what we have touched, emotions are actually produced. Now, EQ is actually the communication between your emotional and the rational part of your brain, and that this is the physical source of your emotional intelligence. Now, if you're going to ask me, since I mentioned about EQ and IQ, what are the similarities or are they totally different? Is it something that if you have high IQ, then it will equally say that you also have that high EQ? Actually, the answer is no. IQ is something that is more innate. It's something that is permanent over a period of time. EQ, on the other hand, is actually a skill. So when I say a skill, it actually means that you can develop it and that you can hone it. Now, for you to be able to appreciate better the structure that is in EQ, let me share to you the competence and skills behind EQ. Now, in EQ, there are two specific competencies. These are the personal competencies and the social competencies. Now, I would like you to focus on these four skills because I am going to, in a way, give more light into these four particular skills. You have self awareness, which is about you understanding what triggers you, the self management. If you get to understand what triggers you, how do you get to sort of like control or do something about the self awareness that you had in terms of your actions? About social awareness, wherein how you are able to also realize that you are part of a unit or a part of a system, how the others or other people get to respond or react to the same situations that you are in, or in any situation for that matter. And last but not the least, about relationship management. So this is how you will be able to maximize, utilize, or even optimize the observations that you're able to see as far as how people respond to situations are concerned, to a, and also to how you're able to sort of like become self-aware and how you get to manage yourself as well, being as a person who's being part of that particular unit or system. Now, you might want to ask the question of how can you develop IQ if it is indeed a skill. I'm going to walk you through a few of the tips that might help you develop your EQ. You need to know first what triggers you. So for example, if you will be able to see something that that would elicit an emotion that you'd become angry. So you need to know, what is it really that made you angry? Is it about the situation, or is it about another thing? So you need to know what triggers you. Another way that you can develop EQ is to observe the ripple effects of your emotional outbursts. So try to remember a time or a situation in the past wherein you had an emotional outburst. Can you remember what was the impact or what was the effect of that outburst towards the other people that you were surrounded with? You also might want to keep a journal of your emotions. In that way, you'd be able to glimpse back into the different emotions that you were able to feel, that you were able to have in the various situations that you were in the past. You might also want to speak to someone who is not emotionally invested in your problem, because this is where the thinking outside of the box might be of use to you. This is where you would gain insights and thoughts from people who are not really emotionally invested into the situation that you're in. Who knows? You might be able to get better insights or approaches from these people who are not, again, emotionally invested in your problem. Another is to practice listening. So it pays to listen before you even speak. Listening also, in my opinion, gets to allow you to have time to be able to just savor that particular instance or that particular encounter wherein you just get to listen before you get to even act or say something. You need to also step into someone else's shoes. So this is where empathy comes in. It would always pay to know, what would the person feel like, or what would I feel if I was in the shoes of that person in that situation. Perhaps it might allow you to have another perspective into how you will be able to attack on a certain situation or a certain experience. And to breathe right. Breathing right, like deep breaths, will allow you to perhaps relax, think through of the situation, realize what emotions are elicited from that situation before you get to even select on what action that you will need to take going forward with that situation. Now, what's in it for you if you're going to hone or develop or even realize the importance of emotional quotient? Remember the four skills that I mentioned to you? So this is how these four competencies or four skills, if you would get to hone your EQ as to where or what aspects these four skills are going to hit. So for example, if you are going to hone on your social awareness, being aware of how people get to respond, get to think of the situation that they are in, you might be able to develop on your empathy and organizational awareness. And the list would also go on with regard to the other skills on self awareness, self management, and relationship management. Remember, fellow Toastmasters and friends, that when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but you're actually dealing with creatures of emotion. So the next time that you'd be in a situation, perhaps you might want to pause, you might want to breathe before you get to even act on something. Good evening. Back to you, Toastmaster Miko.
All right. Thank you, Toastmaster Joy. And every time I hear Toastmaster Joy speak, it always feels like it's a seminar. And it always reminds me that we should always really be grateful to be a Toastmaster. You get learning material like this for free sometimes, but sometimes the speakers are here for practice. All right. And we are now going to take a step back from all of the prepared speeches, and we're going to have some light thinking on our feet. So for this evening, we're going to be moving to our table topics portion. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to Toastmaster Joan. Let's give her a round of applause.
Okay, thank you very much, President Toastmaster Nico. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so our theme for tonight is about Stoicism. Is that correct? Is that the correct pronunciation? Sorry. So for table topics, I'm still confused about the pronunciation, but yes, Stoicism. So for table topics, for the benefit of our non-Toastmaster guests, so just maybe a review. So table topics is a long-standing Toastmasters tradition intended to help members develop their ability to organize their thoughts quickly and respond to an impromptu question or topic. Since it is impromptu, this is the part of the meeting in which almost everyone becomes, I would say, prayerful, praying that they wouldn't be called. Okay? But this topic doesn't really have to be arduous. Here are some techniques one can use in answering table topics. So like in organizing your speech, you may use any of the following patterns, like first state your point, then reason it out, give an example, and then restate your point. And then we also have the story, message, gain, or benefit pattern in which you tell a story first and then give the message of the story or the lesson or moral of the story, and then what would be the benefit or the gain from your story and message. And then there's also an answer, reason, example, message. And the answer could be a simple I agree or I disagree with the quote, and then state your reason, state it, give an example, and then what is your message. And then there's also a past, present, future uh, technique or pattern. And then there's also one in which we call AIDA, grab the attention of your audience, generate interest, and then desire, and then call for an action. Okay, so since the successful volunteers will deliver a speech, it must have a definite opening, body, and closing. And then the timing for this speech is 1 to 2 minutes. So in 1 minute, the timer will flash a green light or green sign. And then at 1 minute and 30 seconds, the sign will turn into yellow. And then if you're already over 2 minutes, then the signal would be turned into red. Okay. Okay, so our topic for today is again Stoicism. And when we talk about this, these are the three Stoics we need to get to know first. So Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. And I have prepared some quotes from these three philosophers. Okay. Okay. Tonight's table topics should really be easy because I will be presenting the 6 quotes directly, and all you have to do is to choose and then talk about it. Okay? So first, no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. Next, happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control and some things are not. Another, you become what you give your attention to. If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. Next, we are often more frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Next, receive without pride, let go without attachment. And the last quote, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, those are the 6 quotes I prepared for our table topics. Then again, you just have to choose one and then start talking about it. So I'm opening the floor now for any volunteers who would like to start. And I'm sorry, I cannot see everybody. Is there somebody? Okay. Wait, I'm opening our.
Go Toastmaster Joy.
Sorry, I'm having problems with my screen, but yep, I've heard Toastmaster Joy is being volunteered.
No, I said Toastmaster DJ is nodding his head. So it's like he wants to answer something. I know he wants to answer
Okay,
something.
Toastmaster DJ, the floor is yours.
You become what you give your attention to. If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. One of the benefits that I appreciate given the pandemic, although it's undesired, but if there's something I'm thankful, it's because traffic is better in the morning when I drive to work. And that's in fact one of my worries when things are going to be in the new normal and everybody's going to go out, because I doubt after over a year of enjoying such a good flow of traffic, I might not be able to withstand people who would eventually cut my way and people who will not necessarily park on the right places or stop in the right places. And if you are close to me, I am a very impatient driver. I am often the person who would surrender or relinquish my mood for the day to the next driver who would misbehave on the road. And this is a particular quote that I always tell myself. Whatever I place my focus on, whether it's that person who is cutting my way or somebody who is misbehaving on the road, then that person can potentially control my thoughts and how my day will become. And so I tried to practice driving to work earlier than scheduled so that I would not be able to be a victim of these thoughts and these behaviors that could eventually drive my mood for the day. You know, fellow Toastmasters and friends, my story is just about driving. But I think we also live in a beautiful but imperfect world. And part of the beauty and imperfections of the world we live in, including the road, are actually actions of other people, behavior of other people that actually can get into our nerves. But ultimately, that's still our choice, whether we allow that behavior to get into our nerves and also to define our day. Let us remember that we actually become what we give our attention to. So if we give our focus to things that we are thankful, if we also take away our focus to behaviors that we dislike, then yes, we are able to control our day, our emotion for the day, our behavior for the day, and also the results that we deliver for the day. Table topics, master.
Wow, thank you very much for that, Toastmaster DJ. And I can't help but relate it also to Toastmaster Joy's speech about emotional quotient or EQ, because, yeah, know your triggers and then focus on more on the positive side and do maybe something about the trigger. So, yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Okay, so next speaker, next
I
volunteer.
think the one who volunteered me might want to also be volunteered.
Okay, go. Toastmaster DJ.
Lain kay ka, sir.
You're with the command. Go. Who will be?
Sorry.
I should have zipped my mouth. Back to you. Back to me. Ah, sige. Okay. Sige. All right. I'm going to choose the quote: happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control and some things are not. Perhaps towards the end of 2020, and there are a couple of Toastmasters who are in the same room that we are in who knew about my predicament. And it was about whether I'm going to stay or whether I'm going to leave the company that I was working for to almost about a year. I I this is where I stutter now. With the two people that I really like, if I were to entrust my career at that point with, I think one common thing that they imparted to me, if this was something out of the discussion I had earlier about emotional intelligence, of getting the perspective of one person who's not emotionally invested into the situation, both asked me or made me realize what would really be my happiness, what would be my happiness at the end of the whole thing. I mean, what would I be happy of at the end of the day? And it boiled down into understanding and being anchoring myself on my principles when I get to work, when I get to be an employee, a mere employee. And the principle that I have in life when it comes to work is really about trust, respect, and integrity. Might be sounding like Toastmasters, but it is. To me, the three things that I mentioned to you are just three of the many things. I also value the principles around transparency and the like. But these three things: trust, respect, and integrity. These are the things that are non-negotiable on my end, that make that, in as far as work is concerned, it will allow me really to be able to appreciate what I have in front of me, that I would be able to be uh, giving that value, that to the people that I work with, in the same manner that they will be giving me the value, as well as a colleague, as a teammate. Perhaps, to cut the long story short, fellow Toastmasters and friends, you need to understand at the end of the day what it is that are non-negotiable, or what are the non-negotiable things on your end. Because the minute that you get to anchor yourself on that, I promise you that happiness and freedom will be something that would be unlimited. You will be empowered, that you will enable yourself really to see the possibilities that lies ahead of you. And the minute that you let go of these principles, the opposite will truly happen. Back to you, Toastmaster Joan.
Wow, very well said, Toastmaster Joy. So I think that is really something that we want to do in our lives, like determine what are really the values you want to live by, what are your non-negotiables. So something that we should reflect on. Okay, thank you very much, Toastmaster Joy. So do you want to volunteer the next speaker, Toastmaster Joy?
I want the next speaker to volunteer himself or herself.
There's already a
Okay,
volunteer, actually.
There is na? Who?
Yes, our general evaluator.
Oh,
so
go TM Jan.
go TM John.
We are often more frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Sir John, talon ka na, bilis! Ikaw na lang naiwan dyan sa taas. You're the only one left from that huge slide, 40 meters high. My soul is not with me in that slide during our 2019 vacation summer outing, last summer outing from Eclaro Academy. And all the things that I could have imagined, I already imagined. I don't want to jump because I might lose a limb. I don't want to jump because I might splatter all over the place because of my fear. But I realize that it all comes down to fear. And what I just imagined is Jesus going or staring me from down there, saying, "Jump, son. I got your back." And then I went on ahead and jumped from that water slide from that beach. And then nothing happened. And then I said, "Success." Fellow Toastmasters and friends, we are overthinkers, arduous overthinkers at that. And sometimes it's only us that are thinking about what's going to come next, even though we're not experiencing it, even though we are not yet experiencing it. So before we imagine anything else, let's see. Let's put ourselves back in our reality. That hey, I might just want to do it first and then just face the consequences after, so that I will not be an overthinker. I'm going to be a stoic. So what I urge you, fellow Toastmasters, just do it with your gut. Don't overthink with all your decisions in life. Make sure that you will never let your imagination be your reality. And with that mindset, I'm, uh, I assure you that it's not going to hurt. It's probably only you thinking of the fear. And just think of people that are with you in this adventure of yours in this life, and you will never be hurt. Table topics master.
Wow, thank you very much for that, Toastmaster GE, John. So I can also relate in terms of being overthinker and well, the fear, of course, of like public speaking. Still a big fear for me, but I'm glad that I have this group of friends who are there very supportive. So thank you very much for at least easing out my fear, even if I still fear. Okay, so I think we still have time, our for one more, right? Timer. We still have time, right? So Toastmaster John, would you like to volunteer? Or is there anyone who would like to volunteer for to be the next speaker
I
for
think TM
Toastmaster
Mariam also
John?
volunteered. TM Mariam.
Okay, okay.
I
Sorry,
volunteered for Toastmaster Lisa. If she would love to.
Toastmaster Lisa.
Okay. Maybe be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Okay. I used to easily get angry right away whenever I ask someone to do something and they do not get it right away, or if I ask them to do something in a specific period of time and they cannot deliver right away. So I easily get angry, and I fail to realize that everyone has their own way of doing things, everyone has their own pace of doing something. But that was before. But recently I'm beginning to embrace this attitude to be more tolerant with others, and I'm more relaxed right now, stress free, because I do not give more pressure to them anymore. I let them do things in their own pacing already, but of course with guidance. But still the same. I continue to do the things in my own way also, because I kind of when I work, I do things like I do not want when somebody is making a follow up with what I do. That's how I work, but I still continue to be strict with how I do things my way. But with my subordinates, I tend to be more relaxed, and it's more effective actually, because they do not get what do you call this? They do not get pressured on me. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Toastmaster Lisa. It's so nice to hear from you. So, yeah, I think it's just really more on managing also the expectations, right? So we should expect more from ourselves than in others, I would say. Okay. So I think can we still have one more speaker, or are we already out of time? Timer. Hi, Toastmaster Gary. And do we
I
still
think we
have
can do.
time?
We are already more than 10 minutes, but
Okay.
Oh, we already more than.
yes.
Okay. So yep, with those, I would just like to wrap up our table topics portion. So those are our quotes, and then maybe just to end, I would just like to share the virtues of Stoicism. So, according to this philosophy, everything we face in life is an opportunity to respond with these four traits: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. So, again, thank you very much for our table topic speakers. And now, back to you, Toastmaster of the evening.
All right. Thank you, Table Topics Master Toastmaster Joan. So, definitely, those are the four virtues of Stoicism. All right. So, we're at the end of our educational portion, and we're also at this last, um, or on second thought, I'll save it for later. All right. So, every part of a Toastmasters meeting, excuse me, we've just finished our educational portion, but in Toastmasters, every part of the meeting is actually evaluated, and that's how we improve. So, just delivering speeches to the air or to an audience doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to improve, but the community here at Toastmasters is here to help you develop the better speech and, in essence, make you a better speaker as well. To explain more about that, I'll pass you along to our general evaluator this evening, Toastmaster Jan. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much, our Toastmaster of the evening, President Miko. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, they say that this is the backbone of every Toastmasters meeting. I am privileged and honored that even though it's my first time to visit the Queen City, I am humbled enough to be with your presence, Royal Toastmasters or members of the royal family. That has a nice ring to it. And with this, I already experienced a buffet of sorts with the speeches and the table topics. And with me, are also my team who will help me with the evaluation. So let's feast with this buffet and let's all learn each other up with these evaluations. So first, I will call on our pantheon since this is our team. My first stoic philosopher who will evaluate Toastmaster DJ. I call on the stage Toastmaster Nicey Ponce. You can leave the pantheon and go and have your stage. Toastmaster Nicey.
And don't put me on the pantheon. No?
Thank you so much, General Evaluator John. Toastmaster DJ, you know that I felt like I was indeed watching a late night talk show on how education system in the Philippines was affected by COVID-19. What I loved about your presentation earlier, Toastmaster DJ, was that it was very informative and that it was indeed engaging, apt, and relatable. You are really in your element, and it came out very natural to you because you have that advanced skills in listening and analyzing. And it made you provide appropriate feedback to your panelists' reactions or responses. I was very engrossed with your presentation and realized that I was actually in an arduous situation because despite my enjoyment, I need to also provide you something that you might hopefully help you level up and get more sponsors to your production in the future. So, if you will allow me to recommend two things, I hope that you can consider: one, still have a clear, concise, central message that you can use all throughout your presentation. Say, for example, I know you can do better than this because you're best at it, but just for the sake of giving an example, maybe you can use prioritize education as key foundation for a better life, no matter what situation, something like that. because that leads me to my second recommendation, which is, since you would have that central message, then I feel that it would be best that you can reiterate or highlight after every time you sum up your feedback in the responses of your panelists. So you use that central message and reiterate that every time you sum up. And whether or not your panelist is aligned to your core message that you are trying to convey at that time. So at least it gives you back to where you are coming from, really, the why. And so, Toastmaster DJ, with these two recommendations, I will be able to simply take home a learning that will stick to my head longer than just a few minutes or a few hours. So, Toastmaster DJ, I will be one of your top fan or followers of that 3 p.m. talk show that will be sponsored by Toastmaster Miko in the future. Yet before that even happens, I am already an avid fan of you and your conversations with Cotton and Ben. So congratulations, and I look forward to more of it. Really, indeed. It's something that brightens my day, and coming here in Queen City Toastmasters Club and listening to you, I am truly blessed. So thank you and have a good night. Good. Back to the general evaluator.
Thank you so much, our first evaluator, Toastmaster Eunice, our first Stoic philosopher. What I loved about her evaluation is she used the traditional KKK, or the kiss, kick, and kiss method. She mentioned that she loved Toastmaster DJ's presentation. It was engaging, relatable, and he was able to display the listening and analyzing skills. Furthermore, she moved into recommending two things to Toastmaster DJ so that it is really objectified, or meaning numbered. So first, to still have a clear and central message, and to highlight the feedback. And then Toastmaster Nicey ended it with the conclusion of having uh, of her being a fan of Toastmaster DJ, because I'm also was engrossed. I didn't notice that we were having it for 40 minutes already because of the great discussion. Me being a teacher as well, I can really relate. And it's really great that we have this system of the KKK. One recommendation only for Toastmaster Nicey is, of course, we would have loved for us to see your facial expressions and emotions. So should the net allow it, we could see your camera being turned on. But other than that, it was still a masterful evaluation because of your concise evaluations, or recommendations rather, and then also topping it up with the conclusion of all the learnings that will stick in your head and all of our heads as well. Thank you so much, Toastmaster Nicey. Let's give her a virtual warm round of applause. Okay, calling on to the Pantheon, I summon the next Stoic philosopher to evaluate our second speaker, uh, who Toastmaster Chai. I call on Distinguished Toastmaster Mariam Solano. The Pantheon is yours.
Thank you, Toastmaster Jan. And I'm being summoned, therefore I am here. But anyway, I'd like to congratulate Toastmaster Chai for giving us yet another wonderful speech. To, I think I'd like to thank you as well, Toastmaster Chai, for your invitation for all of us actually to be more stupid. Beautiful. It's an interesting pitch. Because looking at the chat, a number of people are now talking about their skills to be more stupid. And that's what I love about your speech. As a speaker, I'm drawn to your speech because of the two things. First, the structure of your speech. You have a captivating title. And at the same time, the question as your introduction was captivating as well. You had a smooth transition. You started with a quote that led to the marathon, to the triathlon, then to the details, then to the benefits, then to your invitation, then you went back to the quote. So overall, the way you structured your speech was a solid one. At the very end, this is the biggest surprise for me. when you mentioned you being a triathlete as well, because as I was evaluating your speech, I was trying to figure out why are you talking about this, but then eventually you mentioned about you being a triathlete. That I think gives you a good ending. Now you also had an effective use of visuals. You're visual in the sense that it serves its purpose. So for those who will be delivering their speech who would have visuals, the text are very limited, thus it's very effective. That's commendable. And the photos as well, it sets the mood. And these are personal photos, I believe. And I think that's a good plus. And also for others who are using photos and presenting to Filipinos, I love it if it's not you, but the photos are Asian but not Caucasian. So for me, that's just a side comment, but that's what I love with your visuals. So Toastmaster Chai, as a speaker who has a good content and organization, so allow me then to help you in your delivery. So we're going to focus on your delivery. There's different kinds of purposes for speech. It could be to inform, persuade, humor, or inspire. For your speech, you have three. It's beautiful. You also had humor because you tried to roast yourself. So my advice is the tone to be more varied. So the vocal variety plays a huge place on this one. It's a powerful tool because speech is not just a way to utter a pool of words, but it's a way opportunity for emotions to be drawn, and that's what I love about speeches. So you did your introduction beautifully, by the way, but eventually when you try to inform, I advise you to step back and not do not have that heightened tone and no sense of urgency, so that you could go back again to a different kind of tone. Could be a tone of sarcasm or humor as you roast yourself. So that play of emotions is a beautiful part of speech, making it, as an art. But Toastmaster Chai, I'd like to say that listening to you, it wasn't an arduous task. Rather, I felt like a child solving a puzzle as I wait for the surprise as I place the last piece of the puzzle. So it was a wonderful experience. That's your strand. So now I invite you to creatively, you know, be stupid in your delivery in your next speech. So that's my challenge. Congratulations again, Toastmaster Chai. And back to our general evaluator.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Mariam. You can now relax on your side of the pantheon. And I loved your structure of the speech. She also Toastmaster Mariam also used the KKK, or the kiss, kick, and kiss method. She started with the commendations regarding the things that she liked about the speech of our speaker. And what I also loved about the content of her evaluation was it was also specific with the recommendations. And I would like to highlight this because when she mentioned that it was about the delivery, Toastmaster Mariam and most of us could really relate that it can be one of the highlights. Should this speech be should this speech be repeated as part of the objectives for that next speech? Because the objective of the speech is to be the first of the two speeches for feedback, and for the next speech of this, be it if this is going to be the repeated one, for all of the feedback to be incorporated. So I love that Toastmaster Mariam was specific in this. She mentioned that it was on the delivery that needs to be further honed for the next speech. And what I would suggest, how can I help you, Toastmaster Mariam? I would also would like to reiterate or to our fellow Toastmasters the use of but. Let's be aware of that whenever we give our evaluations. When we state our positive points, we make sure that we don't use the word but. Instead, what we can use is what I would have loved for you to do next time, what I would have liked, so that it won't negate the previous statements. Also, we can also have our tech runs at the beginning. I noticed some sounds regarding your mic, so we can secure our mic so that whenever we are giving the speeches or we're talking, we are also aware that we can hear those types of ambient sounds. But overall, it was a masterful evaluation as well, Toastmaster. Distinguished Toastmaster Mariam, It's a full speech that is also concise and specific with the recommendations. To add value to this, I also would recommend to Toastmaster Chai that all of the feedback by Toastmaster Mariam, we just need to make sure that it is also incorporated into the next speech that you would deliver, since this is a two-part speech for your project. Make sure that your next evaluator would also have whatever Toastmaster Mariam has mentioned. So thank you so much, Toastmaster Chai and Toastmaster Mariam. Let's give them a virtual warm round of applause. Okay, I see someone was also chillaxing in his side of the Pantheon. Our beloved area director, Johnny Kamen. I would summon you now to our virtual Pantheon stage to evaluate those distinguished Toastmaster Joy. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, General Evaluator Jan. Distinguished Toastmaster Joy. Yes, EQ is indeed a game changer, but to me, you were the bigger game changer tonight by sharing such an informative and insightful presentation. And allow me to explain why. First is timing. In terms of your visual aids, you had timing because there were certain elements of the visuals in certain slides that came in the picture as you also explained them from time to time, like the arrows where you were pointing on the spinal cord, selecting or sending electrical signals to the limbic system and all that part. So to me, this created movement and dynamics in the overall presentation. Second, I love that there was also variety in the formatting. You had slides that had paragraphs or texts, images, then tables, in terms of column and in terms of like the coordinate system 1 2 3 4. So, and there was also a pop of color from time to time, from black and white to more contrasting colors. So these elements, randomly arranged from your slides also created that visual outbursts for me and maybe triggered also some pop of emotion as I looked at your screen. Now, Toastmaster Joy or Distinguished Toastmaster Joy, just like emotional intelligence is a skill, speaking is as well. And so I hope that you get to be more self-aware by keeping this short journal of recommendations in the hopes to make your future visual aids more creative and effective. So how can you develop such? First is continuity in the journey. I noticed earlier that you had this table of contents, 1, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and 0, 4. And I would like to suggest to also incorporate it or reflect it in the succeeding slides of your visual aids, to incorporate the number as well, because I think that the topics were there, but I just missed the numbering. To me, it would be a great orientation to also create those visual transitions as you go through the slides, because the table of contents illustrated that there will be 4 big topics. So when you go to the body of the slides, it would also help me understand, okay, we're now in part 3, we're now in part 4. So I would just have that journey or that orientation that we're almost ending, we're halfway there, and you're about to close. So just for me to have that overall view of the entire the overall journey of the visual aids. Second is emphasis in terms of the visuals. I noticed that there were some slides that were essential and had some long texts. So I would suggest that you may want to create emphasis through some animations or through some formatting also. Maybe you might want to create some highlights or bigger fonts in some words to add emphasis and to also really emphasize certain messages, especially about the topic on EQ. There were powerful statements like IQ is permanent, EQ is a skill. So these were parts that you said, and there were also statements like EQ is communication between emotional and rational part of the brain. So maybe the keywords like EQ, emotional and rational, or connection, that can be highlighted or created that contrast so that there is more emphasis on the message. But nonetheless, as a speaker and also as a presenter, I appreciate that you gave or you supplied what's in it for me. You said in your closing, when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. And I also saw that in your presentation. The slides were the IQ part. And when you said, I hope the workers here tonight will benefit from this, this was the EQ part of your speech. And I definitely could relate to that. And you got to connect with me as well. So that was when I found value in using or in viewing your visual aid. So thank you for being able to connect with me through that. So Toastmaster Joy, thank you for being a game changer tonight, not only in using your intelligence quotient through this informative speech, but also in highlighting emotional intelligence by sharing something to the audience, something close to your heart and to your career from the past up to the present. I am sure that the ripple effects that you have created tonight will be a positive trigger in creating in us, hopefully, that 100% emotional competencies in our respective work lives. Congratulations, and back to our general evaluator.
Thank you so much, Area Director John. You can now chill back or chillax back in that area of the Pantheon. What I loved about his evaluation was it was full of energy right at the beginning, right? It didn't have that intimidating aura, and I was hooked into that one. And I also love that he was also specific. He mentioned that what he loved about Toastmaster Joy's speech is the timing, variety, and emphasis. So Toastmaster Joy and all of us were able to see what were the good recommendations about TM Joy's speech. And what I would also just suggest for, or how can I help you, Toastmaster Area Director John, is for us to, first, this is also more of the technical, since I already know that you had a masterful evaluation up until the conclusion part. Let's just make sure that we have our proper headroom so that we can see you. Yeah, you can, I learned this in one of the club hops that I did. I used this, the two fingers to test my head. So if two fingers can fit here, and then I have the proper headroom. And also, we just make sure that we are also aware of our time so that we are not going to go over time. From the evaluation workshop that we had from our club yesterday, Toastmaster Raul de la Vega mentioned that whenever we are hitting the green light, we are supposed to be also in the recommendation parts as well. So that when we are about to wrap up in the yellow and the red part, all of the recommendations are also given. But overall, Toastmaster John, it was a masterful evaluation full of recommendations and also a clear conclusion and ending. Let's give him a warm round of applause, albeit virtually. Thank you so much. Now we move to our last evaluator for the first part. Before we go to our technical tag team, I would call on our table topics evaluator to go to our pantheon. My next TOEIC philosopher, Toastmaster Charlie Dumawal. The stage is yours, sir.
Many people fear public speaking, more specifically, the table topics portion, because this portion gives everyone a chill, nervousness, which leads everyone thinking on their feet. Now, let me talk about our first speaker, Toastmaster DJ. I would like to commend how excellent you are at delivering a message using the pattern SMG. You started at once by sharing with us your personal story. And you know what? Whenever you speak coming from your own story, nobody could ever question that because that is your personal experience. And what I loved about your speech, Toastmaster DJ, was that you started with a speech which was related to the stimulus given, and then you did not forget to go back to it by making a call to action. And then later on, you agreed to it that we become what we give our attention, ourselves attention to. Now, how do I help you become a more excellent speaker next time, Toastmaster DJ? There's one. There's no problem as to content organization. One thing that you have to work on is conviction and vocal variety. Let's say, for example, how do you share your story? Should you become dramatic? Should you should there be moments of whispering, of increasing the pitch of your voice? And then when you make a call to action, how do you deliver that so that it becomes more impactful? Our second speaker is Toastmaster Joy. Toastmaster Joy, you are indubitably a very sensible speaker who never runs out of wisdom whenever you speak. And that wisdom is always beautifully woven with the message of your speech. And then your speech was actually ended by a very powerful call to action. And that is by advising me specifically to know my non negotiables in life so that when I make decisions on whatever the situation I am in, I know what values or what principles I have to keep in mind. One thing that I would like to recommend to you, Toastmaster Joy, is to keep your eyes in the camera when you deliver a speech virtually. Because, as we all know, it is through our eyes that our sincerity as speakers is felt. And when we always look at the camera, we are looking at each of the members in the meeting room. Our third speaker is our GE himself, GE Jan. GE Jan, just like Toastmaster DJ, you are a master of SMG. You caught my attention at once by sharing your own story and you delivered that with conviction. That is a very powerful opening. You knew exactly how to get the attention of your audience or your listeners, especially that meetings nowadays are held online. So, how do you make sure that your audience are listening to you? And that is a very wise way of keeping the attention, getting the attention of your listeners. And then you also ended with a very powerful call to action by giving us pieces of advice on how we can face our fears, that we should never let our imagination become our reality. One recommendation which I would like to give you, Toastmaster Chan, is a control of your physical movements when you deliver a speech so that the attention of your listeners won't be deviated from the message to your sometimes too much movements. Our fourth speaker rather, is Toastmaster Lisa Yu. Toastmaster Lisa, I would like to congratulate you for choosing to be different from among all the table topic speakers tonight. And do you know what made you different from them? By using a different speech format, and that is present PPF, present, past, and then future. I have become a participant of Toastmasters meetings for 100 times already, and I rarely see people use this pattern. And it was so brave of you to have used this pattern, because what you did was you spoke first of your old self. I was too impatient with people before, but now I understand that people have different ways of coping to things. That is really on point of the use of the pattern PPF. One recommendation that I would like to give to you is I would like to remind you that a speech has three basic ingredients. They are introduction, body, and conclusion. If one basic ingredient is missing in our speech, then the taste also of our speech will be different. It was for me too abrupt for you to end your speech because you were at the body or the discussion of of the message, but you already ended at once. Please don't be bothered by the time, because actually you ended at the green light. So you still have 1 minute and 30 seconds to actually continue and develop your topic. So whenever you deliver a speech, always think the three basic ingredients of a speech so that the taste will be perfect and the menu that we will serve to our audience will be a big hit. Unforgettable menu, unforgettable taste, something that they would always long for to taste and go back to. Now, for our table topics master, Toastmaster Joanne, I would like to give you three gems. The first gem is I salute that you defined what table topics is and that you discussed the timing device. The second gem I would like to give you is the discussion of Stoicism. You discussed also or presented the three philosophers where you got the quotations from. And then you concluded the table topics session with the values which we have to remind ourselves of. I would also love to give you recommendations so that the next time you're given the same role, you can take it to a higher level. The first recommendation is maybe you would like to trim down the number of speech formats from five to one or two so that the participants won't have too many options to choose from. And then actually, if you just give one speech pattern, you can also give them a sample, especially if there are non-Toastmasters in the meeting room so that they know how to use that speech pattern. Second is you show the six questions in the beginning of the table topics session. So if this was a contest, the first one is at a disadvantage because he did not have so much time to think of it. But the following contestants or speakers, two to the last, had so much time to choose and think about of their answers because they were given more time. So one thing that you can do maybe is to just show one question at a time so that there also this element of suspense. And third recommendation is don't be afraid to give one line comment on each of the answers of the speakers. Let's say, for example, Toastmaster blank, thank you very much for reminding us to be patient with others. And that's already enough because you are highlighting the gem or the takeaway of the speech of the speaker. On the whole, my fellow Toastmasters and friends, the way to building confidence and mastering the art of impromptu speaking can be arduous, and the only way we can overcome our fear of public speaking is by facing it. Let's say, for example, if you fear public speaking, will basketball, will swimming, biking help you master public speaking? Of course not. My point here is whatever you fear in life, you've got to face it because that's the only way that you can overcome it. Invest in yourself. Allow yourself to go through the process of learning. Don't be afraid to stammer, to stutter, to take some time to think, to pause, to get lost, to fail, to mess up at some point because all of these ones make us human beings. We are not perfect. And the way the process can be painful, but the reward is very fulfilling because at the end of our journey, at the end of the road, we become excellent public speakers. What matters is not the beginning, but the end. What becomes of us after the learning process. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much to our table topics evaluator, Toastmaster Charlie. You can now go back to our uh, seat in our pantheon. I loved about how his entire speech was really full as well. He was also very individualistic when it comes to the table topics evaluation because I would also share what we had yesterday in our evaluation workshop. Some table topics evaluators would mention to also save some time that they would say all of the speakers use this pattern, all of the speakers use that. What I would still love to see in our future stints, should we be table topics evaluators, is to really have that personalization or personalize each comment to our speaker so that they would really have that feedback and they would apply it to their next time should they participate in table topics. So I love that how Toastmaster Charlie gave a commendation and then a recommendation to each of the individual speakers. I also love that he ended with a great conclusion after the table topics master was evaluated, and that really encapsulates everything. It was really a buffet full of tips with regards to our table topics session. I would also love to add a recommendation to our table topics master as well that I also got yesterday. I also called yes because I was a table topics master in our session. The call for volunteers was noted. So if you are a table topics master, you can actually call someone you already know so that that would get the ball rolling instead of us waiting for some volunteers. And because people, when they see that the momentum is there, they would be the ones who volunteer right after someone has spoken. So as a table topics master, you can call someone you already know that can answer. For example, we can use the pattern of calling a seasoned Toastmaster and then a guest and then vice versa. So just something that fellow future table topics master can also take note of. So thank you so much, Toastmaster Charlie and all of the speakers. Let's give them a virtual warm round of applause as well. Now we move on to our tag team of evaluators. I would first call on the stage our grammarian, Toastmaster Area Director John Ikamen to go back to our virtual pantheon. Sir?
Yes, thank you so much once again. I am back. So tonight, I am your language evaluator, and I have the katekon or the duty to present to you with nomos or laws or guiding principles we can use to do some ascesis or exercise to make our language better and to hopefully become more effective communicators. So credit goes to, of course, our word users for the word arduous. Congrats or great job to Toastmaster DJ, Toastmaster Des, myself, Toastmaster Zyril, Toastmaster Chai, Toastmaster Joan, and Toastmaster Jan, among others. I hope I did not miss anyone. For the germs or the hamartia or some errors which we can improve on, the pronunciation, I believe, is stoic and stoicism. And then the STS in the word costs. And then if we use Filipino or Tagalog, somebody said araling panlipunan. So it's quite slang. So I think there has to be more vibration in the R, araling panlipunan. If I did it correctly, I hope I did. I think that the word towards is better said as toward, no S. And then somebody said principles I have about work is. So subject verb agreement on plural. So it's better said as principles I have about work or I have regarding work are. And somebody said I can also relate in being overthinker. So there's a correction we can do to improve on the form. So I can also relate in being an overthinker, or I can also relate in terms of overthinking. So just a minor correction in the form. And of course, for the gems, the words protect and depth were pronounced properly. And from Toastmaster Charlie, I value the culture of kindness as it is penniless yet priceless. And the pun from TMDJ, I posted it in the chat, so I hope it's more effective. And then from Distinguished Toastmaster Miriam, an arduous life is a necessity in reaching your full potential. And of course, the hides from Toastmaster Des, honesty, independence, dedication, excellence, shared responsibility. And when she said education is about sense and sensitivity. From Toastmaster Chai, a strong body would also result to a strong mind. And the quote from the slides of Distinguished Toastmaster Joy, when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. And from Toastmaster Jan during his table topics, don't let your imagination become your reality. So very deep indeed. So as a closing, the masses say that only the free can be educated, but the Stoic says that only the educated can be free. So that being said, now that we have been a little bit more educated with language, I hope that we are now also a little bit more free to share and express. Thank you, and back to our general evaluator.
Thank you so much, our grammarian, Toastmaster Area Director John Ikamen. I also still would highlight this because we can only do this type of evaluation at a certain level. So I love the energy, Toastmaster John. Let's continue to have this have while we are still having this setup, and also once we have experiencing or when we are already in where we are in the post-pandemic scene, right? Because the energy is really going to be viral as well. Okay, and also I loved how you used the complex words at the beginning, and it also took my attention into listening into the evaluation of our grammar. Great use of the germs and the gems. I would love to suggest that you can also use other terms for germs and gems. We can actually use like the uh, the philosophers that use our gems are, and then the doubters or the non-believers are these the ones that made the germs, so that we can also have that creativity and variety in the way that we are giving our grammarians evaluation. We can also use this as a speech as well, but overall it was a great grammarians evaluation, many gems and all the germs are also noted. I heard one from me as well. Thank you so much, Master John. Let's move on to our next Stoic philosopher, our accounter. Okay, let me call on Toastmaster Epraline Salo. The virtual pantheon is yours.
Hello, good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. So, yes, the beauty of Toastmaster organization is we are here not to be judged the way we speak, but how we convey our message the simplest form as possible. And to be mindful the filler words that we sometimes use in our sentences, such as and other repetitive words. So, as your counter for tonight, I've noted some opportunities for us to improve and eliminate our filler words so we can deliver our message clearly and, of course, become a better communicator. So please allow me to share my screen for my report. So, congratulations to some of our philosophers who committed none any mistakes for tonight. We have a numbers of speakers. Let me congratulate Toastmaster Gary during the declaration of session hall, and Toastmaster Zai, the invocation, Toastmaster Deji during the introduction of the Toastmaster of the night, and Toastmaster um, who else? Yeah, Toastmaster Zai and Toastmaster Deji. And during the project speech, we have congratulations Toastmaster Chai. And during the table topics, congratulations Toastmaster Deji and Toastmaster John. And for the evaluation part, congratulations Toastmaster Eunice, Toastmaster Mariam, and Toastmaster Charlie, because you were all spontaneous during your projects during the delivery of your speech. So for those who have committed some errors or mistakes, it's okay because there is still a lot of improvements like I do. I always I always have these arms, but yes, we have to be mindful to somehow eliminate those in our next speaking engagement. So I hope you've noted that, and the next time you will the next time you deliver your speech, then from 4 us down to 2 us or maybe one. So yes, back to our general evaluator. That's for my report for tonight.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Epraline. You can now go back to our side here in our Pantheon. I love the energy as well. Again, I will always highlight this because we are still in the virtual setup. And I also love that you use the screen share option so that our report is also visual. We can clearly see right away, did I commit any us? Because all of us here, the speakers, we would pinpoint our names and then we see that if we have the congratulations or not. So great use of the screen share and the Excel file because it also would maximize your time instead of us just hearing who use these filler words. We are given this visual report, which is I also encourage to future counters, timers, and even grammarians as well. What I would suggest, since you also use you already have the visuals, you can help us with some of the tips as you are ending your report. How can we eliminate these filler words? For example, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I would suggest that we can use our pauses. Make sure that we pause, we breathe in and out before we speak, and we make sure that what we are going to say is already processed in our head so that we can eliminate our filler words so that all of us here that are listening we can also get more value in your report as an counter. But overall it was great because of the masterful use of the Excel table. I've yet to do that as an counter. So thank you so much, Toastmaster Epraline. Let's give her a virtual warm round of applause. Thank you. Now, our stoic philosopher who had the biggest watch, I would summon to the stage Toastmaster Gary Watin. The
Thank you
pantheon
for
is
that.
yours.
Thank you for that, Toastmaster John. And for the once again, good evening, everyone. For the benefit of to our non-Toastmaster friends, my role as a timer is to remind all speakers how much time they spent on their speech, so that we will run this meeting on time. I will raise the green color when the speech is long enough according to your project requirement. For example, 2 minutes for table topics and 7 minutes for prepared speeches. Yellow colors will be flashed in the screen when speakers should be aware of their time is running up, and red color when the allowed time is finished. For all facilitators, the length of your speech is already indicated in the agenda. And at the end of this meeting, I will be back on stage to present my report. So now I have here the report of the time each speaker consumed. So in the prepared speeches, Toastmaster DJ was 4 minutes over time. Toastmaster Chai was on time. Toastmaster Joy was 2 minutes over time. And in the table topics portion, Toastmaster DJ was 20 seconds over time. Toastmaster Joy was 21 seconds over time. Toastmaster Jan and Toastmaster Lisa both are on time. And for the whole duration of the table topics portion, we were 10 minutes over time because we started at 8:38 p.m. and ended at 8:58 p.m. And the allowed time for this portion is only 10 minutes. And in the evaluation portion, Toastmaster John was 44 seconds over time. Toastmaster Mariam and Toastmaster Nicey were both on time. In the table and our table topics evaluator, Toastmaster Charlie was also on time. Our grammarian Toastmaster John was on time, and also Toastmaster Aprilin was also on time. So that would be all. Thank you, and back to our general evaluator, Toastmaster John.
Thank you so much for that one, Toastmaster Gary. I love the being your report being concise of each of the individual speakers. What I would just also suggest is in the future, should you be able to explore it as well, so the use also of the screen share option, so that we can also have this as a visual for our time, and then we can also have or give additional value on our stint as a timer, on how we can, you can also give us some tips on how can we be on time. And for us here in the virtual meetings, one concrete example is for all of the speakers to either have the timer pinned by you, or we can also assist our speakers to have this the timer spotlighted at a certain time by the host, so that the speakers are also aware. You can also share that whenever you have your timers report, so that in the future our future speakers are also going to be more aware on how can they be more on time by having that visual cue. And also in the speaker's point of view, they can also be reminded that make sure that your points are also going to be summarized, so that you won't go over time also in your speeches. But overall, it was a great stint. Thank you so much, Toastmaster Gary. Let's give him a virtual applause. Thank you, thank you. All right, I would move forward to my evaluation of our Toastmaster of the evening, Toastmaster President Miko. I love that you also had that energy and it was also consistent. You welcomed each and every one of us here with our team. You explained it masterfully because you dropped these medallions all throughout the meeting, and it gave us really a sense of we're watching like a documentary about these medallions. I was able to learn about the amor fati, the love of faith, and premeditatio malorum, or contemplating about the bad things that will happen. Made me also internalize that maybe I am really sometimes a stoic. Whenever bad things would happen, I would just be indifferent and not feel a thing. So thank you so much for those tiny tidbits that made our Toastmaster meeting more interesting. One recommendation that I can give you, Toastmaster President Miko, is for the benefit of our non-Toastmaster guests, we can give an introduction of the Queen City Toastmasters Club, so that they would know how this club was formed, or how the brief history of the club as well, so that they can see, this is their club. This is what makes their identity unique as well. Or why do they call themselves the Royals or the fellow members of the Royal family? But overall, it was a great stint as a table, Toastmaster of the evening. We all feel welcome, specifically me being a first timer here. So great job and kudos to you, President. Thank you so much. Let's give our President virtual warm round of applause. Woohoo! Pardon my
All right.
visual effects. And before that, lastly, as a general evaluation of the flow, it was really great. I had fun because it was a buffet of sorts. From the panel discussion up until the table topics, I had my notes here. So just maintain the energy in every meeting, guys. And again, I pardon for my lateness because we're in 9:47. So overall, it was great. So I turned back the procedures to our president, Toastmaster Miko.
All right. Thank you, Toastmaster Jan. All right. We are at 9:48, and I would just leave you with one last medallion for this evening. So we've been through Amor Fati, we've been through Primidetatio Malorum, but the last tenet of Stoicism is Memento Mori. And what Memento Mori means is remember death, or more specifically, remember your death. One thing that a Stoic is always keeps in mind is that our time on Earth is very limited. So just like what Seneca would say is whatever can happen at any time can happen today. So Marcus Aurelius and many of the other Stoics are always an advocate of living your best life today and every day because Seneca again. So that's it. It's really about living your best life and remembering that we might not have tomorrow, and we need to make the most out of today. So thank you everyone for being here in our meeting. I'd like to ask everyone to turn on their cameras so that we're gonna take a photo up real quick. Maybe we can ask Toastmaster John if we can take the photo. So while we're waiting for everyone else to turn on their photo videos, um, maybe ask if the internet allows. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Toastmaster Jan, Toastmaster Charlie, and Toastmaster Nicey for making it all the way here in Queen City. Some are first timers. Thank you, Toastmaster Jan. Some are visiting after a long time that we haven't seen them, Toastmaster Charlie and Toastmaster Nicey. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time. And just like in the words of Toastmaster Charlie, that's what we do here at Toastmasters. We help each other. So thank you, Toastmaster Charlie and Toastmaster Nicey, especially about your talk about kindness, and especially to Toastmaster Jan. I apologize profusely for uh, not advising that we would actually start a bit earlier. So I forgot to forward that information to Joel. All right, so I think we're good to go for the photo. So on your mark, Toastmaster John.
All right. I hope everyone is ready. Okay, give us your best smiles. One, two, three. One more. One, two, three. All right. Back to
All
you,
right,
Nico.
thank you,
Hi,
Toastmaster
Miss
John.
Joy.
Or
Okay na.
I think Miss Joy was. I think Miss Joy is taking a call right now.
Ay, okay. All right.
I'll. So we do have a little bit of a business portion this evening, but we'll make it very quick. But before we get into our business portion, I'd like to give our visiting Toastmasters some time to plug their club, so that if we have the time, we can also pay them a visit at their club. So let's start with Toastmaster Jan, our general evaluator for this evening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, President Miko. I invite everyone to join us in Claro Toastmasters Club. We meet every second and fourth Fridays of the month. We have our next meeting on May 14. Mother's Day is our team. And then the next one is on May 28th. So it's also the same time as yours, 7 p.m. And I would love for you to be there. So again, every second and fourth Fridays of the month, Claro Toastmasters Club. Thank you, President.
All right, thank you, Toastmaster Jan. Let's move on to Toastmaster Charlie.
Once again, thank you very much for having invited me to your beautiful, awesome, amazing meeting. I learned a lot. I will be sleeping with a lot of takeaways. I invite you to our meeting on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Please be with us, and our general evaluator for that meeting will be our AE Area Director, John Ikane.
All right, thank you, Toastmaster Charlie. And last but not the least, of course, our Program Quality Director, Toastmaster Nicey.
Yay, good evening, everyone, and inviting you to our second meeting this month. That will be on May 19th. We meet first and third Wednesdays of the month. So, and hope to see you in Cebu, GE John, next year. DisCon
What
2022.
time is your meeting, Toastmaster Nicey?
7 p.m. there. Sorry.
Okay, 7 p.m. Okay. All right. So, thank you, our visiting Toastmasters. So, very quick, our business portion is we're going to get some feedback from our guests. So, for Jason and Lil, we'll ask you a bit of feedback. So, just take this few moments to get ready. So, second is our club elections are coming up. Toastmaster John is getting ready with the nominations. um, so you can PM Toastmaster John if you have a nomination, or I'm not exactly too sure how we're going to go about it. But you can send Toastmaster John a message if you have someone to nominate. And lastly, here is our DCP update. I don't need to show the slide. We're actually at 8 members. We're at 8 DCP points. We have one speech remaining for the last point of education, and we have one member remaining for our last point for the membership. So we don't have anything to worry about. We're doing great. And just like I mentioned to everyone, I'm not an advocate of keeping your norms for the next Toastmasters year. So if you want to finish your DTM or your second path this year, then do it. If you want to finish your level 3, level 4, or level 1, even if we're already past, way past the requirements this year, then you should do it, because Toastmasters is always about learning and pushing yourself. So I'd like to introduce our two guests for this evening. We actually weren't able to. I actually skipped over the part to acknowledge them because both of them actually arrived during the evaluation portion. So we have both. These are both student leaders from CIT. Both of them have connections to the Supreme Student Government and have served in the Supreme Student Government. One of them is a leader from my club in the Debate Society. One of them is a leader from my club in the Institute of Computer Engineers of the Philippines. These are two of my friends from CIT. First, we have Jason Lim, who has visited us before, and Lil Kabilin. I'm not butchering last names again. All right. So these are two students who are very excited to join Toastmasters if they have the opportunity. So let's start with Jason. If you could tell us a bit about your experience tonight.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the invite, Miko. Uh, Overall, it was really a nice session. The vibe that I'm having is like, it's like, how do I explain this? It's like overwhelming, but not entirely oppressive. That kind of vibe. I mean, it's way different from the society. I guess, Miko, you know that for a fact. It was really, overall, it was very informative. It was a good, for me, the Toastmaster session was really a good way to practice speaking, and at the same time, take in also life lessons, I guess. So overall, it was really a nice session for me. Thank you, Miko, for the invite.
All right. Thank you, Jason. And can we hear a bit from Lil as well?
Hello, am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to Kamika for inviting me. And this is my first time attending this event or like meeting, and I learned something from the speakers and evaluators, and it's actually fun. So I guess that would be all. Thank you so much, Kimito, and everyone.
All right. Thank you, Lil. So now we are at the end of our meeting. We did make it right before 10 p.m. So, just a quick recap towards the next meeting. We are looking for a general evaluator as well. If you have someone in mind from a different club, maybe we can invite them. But our TME is going to be Toastmaster John unless an event comes up. So it's gonna be Toastmaster John unless he's going to explore the waves. So, so tentative for our Toastmaster of the evening is Toastmaster John. And is are you going to deliver another speech, Sir DJ, to wrap up your okay? So we also have Sir Gary who's going to deliver a speech as well. So we're almost full up on our speech slots. So I think we only have one more left, and we're also going to be and Toastmaster Chai, are you also going to okay, so now we have no more speech slots. Now we have all slots open for our evaluators, and hopefully you don't cancel last minute like what happened tonight. So I'd like to take the last minutes to really give a deep thank you to Toastmaster Jan, Toastmaster Charlie, and Toastmaster Nicey, because it has been a very surprising and eventful evening, both in front and behind the scenes. But again, at Toastmasters, we help each other. So thank you, everyone, and good evening. All right. So good evening, everyone.
Adjourn.
I think we all have stuff to do. If you are going to looking for a recording of this meeting, it's going to be uploaded on YouTube. I'm trying to get through all of the meetings that we've had in the past year, and then I'll give someone a link to. I'll get everyone a link to the playlist so you can explore the whole Toastmasters year that has been. So I'm very excited for that as well. Thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Adjourn, please.
Hey, sorry. Oh my God. Thank you, Toastmaster John. By the power vested in me as the president of Queen City Toastmasters Club, but more importantly, by you, the members of our club, I hereby call this meeting adjourned. I'm sorry.
Thank you so
Good
much,
night.
everyone. Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.